My husband slapped me hard enough to draw blood, then tried to cover it up. I gave him a criminal record, job loss, and a permanent seat in a jail cell. My husband Brad slapped me at his March work dinner in front of his boss and 8 coworkers. I joked he left socks everywhere. Everyone laughed. Brad didn't. Turning, he punched me in the mouth and chuckled. You know, controlling the wife. His boss, Jason, laughed despite discomfort. Others paused. Someone switched topics. Brad forcefully pinched my shoulder. Touched my lip. There was blood. Brad offered me napkins. Clean yourself up. You're making a scene. I stared in the bathtub mirror. Split lip, red cheek mark. Brad was telling another anecdote when I returned. Everyone laughed again, unfazed. In the car, Brad was annoyed. You made me look bad, joking about my habits like I'm some child. I bet. He persisted. Jason probably thinks I can't control my own household. This could affect my promotion. Your promotion? You hit me. Rolling his eyes, Brad. I barely touched you. Stop being so dramatic. You've always been too sensitive. Next morning, my lips swollen. Brad didn't apologize. Instead, he regretted late breakfast. Brad was right, I'm meeting Jason for golf. Can't be late because you're moving slowly. Promotion would suffer. I asked Brad's HR about domestic violence policies. Extremely zero tolerance. Even outside of work, violence is grounds for immediate firing, especially if coworkers see it. Interesting. Appointment for Monday. A turtleneck covered my shoulder bruise. HR Director Marie was polished. You said you needed to discuss a sensitive matter. My husband, Brad, hit me at the company dinner on Friday night in front of Jason and the entire Northeast sales team. Brad Dalton? Is your husband Brad Dalton? Yes. He slapped me when I made a joke. Jason saw it. Everyone saw it. This is serious. We need to investigate immediately. On Tuesday, they interviewed all dinner guests. Most downplayed. Just a marital spat. Didn't see much. Couples being couples. 2 confessed. Brad's co-workers Hudson and his wife. Smack. Blood. And Brad's laughter were reported. Brad was suspended Wednesday pending inquiry. The man was upset at home. You went to my work? Are you insane? You hit me in front of your co-workers. That's insane. It was nothing. A tap. Now I might lose my job. Good. Brad grabbed wrist. You're going to call Marie right now. Tell her you exaggerated. Tell her it was a misunderstanding. I retreated. No. He approached. This is my career. Our income. How will we pay the mortgage? Maybe you shouldn't have hit your wife at a company event. Hit the wall, Brad. Now you've done it. When I fix this, you're going to regret ruining my life. Thursday. DIY repairs were tried by Brad. Called Jason, claimed I was mentally ill, on medication, and lied for attention. Jason didn't buy. Brad, I saw you hit her. We all did. She provoked me. She's always provoking me. Jason told HR about the conversation. Brad refused to apologize. Actually blamed me. He threatened what would happen after repair. Friday, Brad was fired. Took a cardboard box. 15 years at that company. Can't stop talking cost you 15 years. You mean because you couldn't keep your hands to yourself? Brad threw the box at me. Missed. You've destroyed everything. My reputation is ruined. Word spread swiftly. Brad applied to other firms. They'd want references. Jason would explain Brad's firing. Company event spouse assault. No one touched him. Brother Brad called, help Brad. He made a mistake. Tell people it wasn't bad. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. He hit me in public. His brother raged. Are you destroying his life over one slap? He destroyed his own life. And it wasn't the first time. Just the first time with witnesses. Month 2 saw Brad unemployed. Mortgage late. He blamed me daily. If you hadn't gone to HR. If you weren't so sensitive, I won't suffer like this. The back of my head was repeatedly slapped. He persisted. He screamed in anguish as a pan hit his head while I cried. Marie, his mother, supported him. The pan was raised, and she urged me to get my phone and bag. Her voice shook but held. I had trouble closing my purse after taking it from the counter. My phone was on the table. Grabbed it. Brad stood up, blood on his temple. Red appeared on his palm after touching his skull. His eyes grew and shrank. Moved toward us. Marie intervened, pan raised like a weapon. Brad paused. He pointed at me and said that I destroyed everything and would pay for his death. Marie forced me outside. Brad yelled louder. Marie opened the front door. She pulled me outside first, then followed me, separating Brad and me. He lurched onto the porch, threatening to hurt us if caught. We ran to her car in the driveway. Shaky hands prevented me from clicking the seat belt in the passenger seat. Marie began and drove away, tires squealing. Brad shouted and pointed outside. I saw him in the side mirror as we drove away. He raged and threatened. My body shook constantly. I kept picturing his look before Marie hit him. He persisted. He would have hit me till something bad happened. I was saved by his frying pan by my mother. Marie confined me in her home. She double-checked locks. She turned on the kitchen kettle. She grabbed 2 mugs from the cabinet with trembling hands. She apologized often. At her kitchen table, I was speechless. Her tea kettle whistled as she poured hot water over tea bags. She placed the cups on the table and sat across from me. She said Brad's dad hit her. How she left Brad at 12. Brad's fury, how he talked about me, and other symptoms developed, she said. She thought he was different, learned from his father, and would never be that way. She cried while speaking. Brad's other hits were listed. I couldn't verify her holding my hand across the table without anyone around. She cried and apologized. Wept too. Crying and drinking tea took a while. Marie advised me to stay. She interrupted my argument. She claimed Brad would be angry and look for me at home. She reported called the police. Was queasy. Notifying HR was one thing. Larger police calls were scary. What if things got worse? Marie watched me carefully. She said Brad tried to hurt me, wouldn't stop, and she might not have a pan next time. She called before I could argue some more. During her dispatcher call, I froze on the couch. She gave our address, said her kid attacked me and she had to restrain him with a frying pan, and said I needed medical attention. I gazed at the wall and wondered how I went from dinner joke to police report. The operator said police were coming. Marie hung up and sat with me. Her arm encircled me. Together waiting. 2 officers arrived 20 minutes later. Man and woman. Explained what happened. My voice was hesitant and low. My head and neck were photographed. The bruises appeared. Dark purple is Brad's repeated hand contact. Did Marie witness it? Asked the female officer. Marie smacked me after walking into her son. She hit him with a pan to stop. Quantity of blood. Officers recorded everything. I was asked to file charges. I regarded Marie. She nods. I whispered yes. The male cop said Brad will be arrested tonight for domestic abuse. Female officer said I reported it accurately. Untreated conditions often deteriorate. I received next steps documents. I didn't know court dates and processes. Police gave restraining orders. They suggested filing one in the morning. The male officer claimed Brad's workplace violence termination would support my pattern claim. Going to HR in March revealed Brad had hit me before. That document trail could save my life, said the officer. They asked where I could stay safe. I introduced Marie as my host. They liked not returning home alone. I got a domestic abuse resource card with shelters, treatment, and lawyers. Call any time if Brad phoned me, stated the female officer. They left to catch him. On Marie's couch, I held the card and documentation. Everything seemed false. I couldn't sleep that night. Marie put me in her guest room, but I stared at the ceiling. I jumped at every sound. Wind rattling windows, car, outside, home settling. Always checking door locks. Marie knocked 3 a.m. check on me. Unable to sleep. She entered and sat on bed. She recalled leaving Brad's father as scary and heartbreaking. He never became the man she believed she married after 15 years of hoping. Her hardest part was admitting she couldn't regain those years. We chatted until daybreak. She disclosed confidential info. Unspoken details were exposed. Though tired, we felt less alone in the morning. Phone rings about 9. Marie said and handed it to me. It was police. They said Brad was arrested for domestic assault last night. He was county jail. 2-day bail hearing. Due to the seriousness of the attack and my descriptions of his earlier hits, they advised him to stay in detention until trial. Comfort and dread overcame me. Locking him up helped. His release caused fear. The cops encouraged me to get a restraining order today. Said I would. After hanging up, I told Marie what they said. She made breakfast and we ate quietly. You and I considered the future. Marie challenged me in court. We identified the right office and I completed TROs. I showed the clerk the police report number. She proposed rushing it due to active assault allegations. Waiting 2 hours. Finally, a clerk called. A judge reviewed my paperwork in her office. My police report and injury photos were checked. She questioned Brad's past. Her order was signed. Brad could not contact me inside 500 feet. The judge threatened immediate detention if he broke it. I knew Brad would locate me after leaving with the right documentation. The only consequence was his arrest. The police said I could recover my items from the house with an escort. It was safe because Brad was jailed. 2 officers met us. After unlocking, I entered. It looked normal. It felt wrong today. A bit grimy. There was violence everywhere when I entered the rooms. The kitchen where he pushed me against the counter. In the living room, his hard grip wounded my wrist. I felt degraded after his bedroom remarks. I packed fast. My laptop, clothes, important documents, and pre-bad photos are mine. Officers took boxes to Marie's car. I checked the house one last time before leaving. I examined the life I was building here. Imagining the future. It was all fake. Fear and power disguised as love underpinning it. We left everything behind when I bolted the door. Marie drove me to the bank the next morning. We entered after waiting in the parking lot. She indicated Brad would empty accounts following bond or release. I needed to defend myself before he seized everything. Entered and requested account opening consultation. Nice banker. She didn't question my personal account request. She assembled everything in 20 minutes. Brad and I switched savings banks. I used my ID to request half. A teller printed a slip after checking balance. Over $3,000. I took $2,000 cash. My hands shook, signing the withdrawal form. Indeed, this happened. I ended our financial cooperation by separating our money. After Marie drove us home, I deposited the funds in my new account using my smartphone app. She sent $2,000 in an envelope. I can't take this. You already let me stay here. You need a safety net. Brad left you with nothing. This gives you options. She ignored my arguments. After accepting the money, I hugged her. Owning anything helped me breathe. The phone rang when we made lunch that afternoon. Marie replied seriously. I heard her voice grow as she entered the other room. She was upset when she returned. That was Sebastian. He wanted to know where you are. What did you tell him? That you're safe and he needs to stay out of it. He says I'm overreacting to a family dispute. Marie sat at the table, her head in her hands. I told him I saw Brad trying to beat you unconscious. That this isn't a dispute. This is assault. My call ended. She seemed fatigued at me. Not everyone in Brad's family is going to support you. Some of them will take his side no matter what. Sebastian thinks I'm betraying my own son. Squeezing her hand. You saved my life. Though she nodded, I could tell she was hurt. Picking between her son and morals was breaking her apart. The phone rang again an hour later. After checking caller ID, Marie didn't answer. 4 more rings that night. She turned off the phone, and we ate dinner silently. We went to Brad's bail hearing 2 days later. In the house, I covered my fear with sunglasses. The courtroom was small and cold. Brad and his lawyer sat at a table in orange jumpsuits. He ignored me when we entered. As the judge entered, everyone rose. Brad's attorney talked. He said Brad wouldn't run. No criminal record. Dismissed after 15 years at company. Solid community member. The prosecutor rose. She was younger than expected. She claims he was fired for workplace aggression toward his wife. That my police statement demonstrated abuse in pattern. Blamed the victim and showed no remorse. The judge regarded Brad. Do you have anything to say? Brad rose. Your Honor, my wife and I had a disagreement that got out of hand. I was under a lot of stress from losing my job. Judge silenced him. This isn't about stress. This is about assault. Bail is set at $40,000. Brad blanched. Your Honor, I can't afford that. Judge closed the file. Then you'll remain in custody until trial. Next case. Guards hauled Brad away. Then he stared at me. Hatred in his eyes. I faced him calmly. Marie took me to a divorce lawyer the next day. A small building near church was her office. The lawyer was listed on a bronze entry plate. Periodicals and nice chairs are in the waiting room. Marie discovered a lawyer. She took us to her office after shaking my hand. I explained all. The company dinner assault, Brad's termination, months of blame and wrath, the home attack, she noted and asked. After I finished, she reclined. I can take your case. Given the circumstances, I'll reduce my usual rate. Brad's unemployment would help me, she claimed. Violence was his. Courts would frown on violent husbands who couldn't support themselves. She filled out paperwork. Bottom contains my signature. Hand shook, but I survived. She copied and put them in my labeled folder. I'll file these tomorrow. You should receive a court date within a few weeks. We left after thanking her. Marie asked how I felt in the car. I told her I was finally doing something but surviving. I saw the domestic abuse shelter counselor 3 days later. Marie scheduled it. The counselor's office had soft lighting and tissues on every table. She asked my marriage tale. My corporate dinner was interrupted by, go back further. When did you first notice something was wrong? Thought about it. Brad always controlled my money and sight. The man stated he cared. A counselor nodded. That's financial abuse in isolation. Common tactics to maintain control. She mentioned Brad's job loss animosity wasn't about the job. Concerned about losing control. I couldn't rely on him without pay. That exacerbated violence. I processed sitting. She talked. Dinner slap wasn't first. Others saw it first. She was right. I thought it wasn't that bad after years of excuses. He was stressed. I was sensitive. She offered tissue. You're starting to see the patterns now. That's the first step to breaking free. Hudson called Marie's residence a week later. She gave me the phone. It's Brad's coworker, the one who testified. I took it carefully. A friendly, hello. I wanted to check if you're okay. I heard about Brad's arrest. A few company workers are worried. Tears began. He paused. People pretended not to see. I couldn't. My wife and I both saw what he did to you. I thanked him again and hung up. It was who? Asked Marie. She smiled at my explanation. See, not everyone sided with Brad. Some people actually care about what's right. That night, I wondered who could have ignored Hudson's call. But he didn't. He spoke up, despite workplace awkwardness. That mattered more than he thought. Marie was shopping one morning when the phone rang. Replied without thinking. Recordings existed. County jail inmate. Brad's voice stopped me from hanging up. Stop hanging up. I must speak. I ended. He sobbed, sorry. Stress broke me. I never meant to hurt. I'll seek help if you drop charges. I swear. Real aid this time. Try therapy. Anger management. Whatever. My heart raced as he tried again to get me to save him with bogus promises. My conversation ended without a word, and I called the jail to block their number. I told Marie when she got home and she hugged me after putting groceries away. You acted correctly. He'll keep seeking you. Maintain your strength. Marie's mail arrived the following week, 2 heavy envelopes with mortgage business return addresses. The old house had one for me and a message. I opened both and saw foreclosure notices. We were 4 months behind and couldn't pay up. Marie phoned my lawyer. After we split, Brad's debt wasn't mine because we shared a name. The lawyer suggested selling the house. The bank would take the house and be done. That house would be our future home, but I was afraid there. Letting go was like shedding weight. Nothing further was needed. Lawyer handled paperwork. I ignored the notices and started applying for jobs the following week, updating my CV on Marie's kitchen table with my laptop. Brad always stated his pay was good. I submitted 20 applications in 3 days to accounting firms, offices, and anyone else that would hire someone with my experience and a big gap in employment. Most didn't respond, but a few emailed rejections. A small company interviewed me. When the boss asked about the gap, I considered lying but was tired of hiding. I left abuse. My life is being rebuilt. She lingeringly gave me a 2-week entry-level position. I almost cried in her office and accepted it quickly. When I told Marie, she held me so fiercely I couldn't breathe. You're doing it. Your escape is real. Marie urged me to join a family domestic abuse support group at her church. I hesitated but agreed. We arrived there Tuesday night and saw chairs grouped in a small space. About 10 people attended. A facilitator introduced everyone and asked for contributions. A woman raised her hand and stated her son had beaten his girlfriend for years, but she didn't want to see it, made excuses, and didn't care. The partner was hospitalized. Others shared. Parents who condoned abuse. Sisters who disregarded it. Partners healing from escape. Not sharing, but hearing. After the meeting, Marie and I waited in the car. Wipe her eyes. I needed to hear that I'm not the only mother dealing with this. Her hand was squeezed as we drove home silently, but we felt company. I felt sick when my lawyer called 3 days later and posted Brad's bail and Sebastian pledged his home. She obtained an emergency restraining order. After Brad's conduct, the prosecution was furious because his family helped him get bail. He was released afternoon with an ankle monitor. He couldn't violate the restraining order, 500 feet minimum at all times, I reminded Marie after hanging up. She paled but nodded. We double-checked her door and window locks and armed the security system. I couldn't sleep that night. Marie's security system beeped about 2 a.m. Driveway motion detected. We raced to the window but saw nothing, although the alert showed a car stopped and reversed. I watched the street through a curtain crack while Marie called the police, who arrived in 10 minutes. Brad was found 1 block away in his car after a search, technically within the 500-foot limit but viewing the home. He spoke with officers for a while, returned and said he was pondering while parked. They threatened immediate arrest if he approached. He drove gently away. No sleep the rest of the night. Marie and I shopped for groceries the next afternoon. I saw a tall, dark-haired person in the cereal aisle wearing Brad's jacket. My chest tightened and I couldn't breathe. After turning around, There was a stranger who looked nothing like Brad from the front, but I was already hypervent. Marie grabbed my arm and had me breathe gently on a bench. Count to 4 in. Marie drove us home and made tea. She suggested me to see the shelter-recommended therapist, but I hesitated, thinking I was all right. I set an appointment for the following week, confessing I needed help with everything. The therapist's office was modest and quiet. She made me fill out safety papers first. She explained my shop panic episode as normal trauma response. She called it hypervigilance and said my body was protecting me. We ground. I saw 5 things, touched 4, heard 3, smelled 2, and tasted 1. She taught me breathing techniques and trigger identification assignments. Our safety strategy included scenarios like what to do if Brad appeared, how to handle his contact, and what to do if I had another panic attack. Jason called my lawyer days later to request a divorce support statement, saying the company had dealt with other incidents after Brad's firing when his behavior was worse than documented. Other employees reported Brad's temper issues and disrespectful statements about me. Jason would document everything. I told my lawyer, yes, immediately. Brad's former boss's behavior record was crucial. Jason sent me a 3-page statement detailing specific incidents and conversations, including Brad's joke about keeping me in line at a company event and his comments about wives needing to know their place, which I didn't know others had seen and remembered. My divorce settlement offer was nearly nothing. The house was foreclosed, and Brad wanted me to take half the credit card debt and keep the paid-off car. His lawyer argued I hurt Brad's job and earning potential, therefore I should pay. We included abuse evidence, restraining orders, criminal charges, and police reports. I got the car, half of any leftover savings, and no accountability for Brad's hidden or post-termination debts. My lawyer said we wouldn't help an abusive unemployed defendant facing jail time. Brad's attorney remained silent. My new job started Monday morning in a bright office. My boss showed me my desk and introduced me to the accountants. Everyone was friendly but not inquisitive. I spent the first week learning their software and filing procedures. It was fantastic to think outside of panic and survival. Boss understood my condition and just let her know if I needed therapy or court dates. No questions. Having my own income again was disconcerting. Brad always managed our money and told me his wage was adequate. My salary could be spent, saved, or utilized to construct my life. It was like regaining a piece of myself from Brad. The prosecution requested a meeting 6 weeks before the criminal trial to prepare my testimony. At her downtown office, she had me retell the night Brad attacked me, asked comprehensive questions about earlier events, and showed me police photographs of my injuries. Marie's testimony was powerful, and photo evidence was evident. I was frightened to face Brad in court and explain his aggression, but the prosecutor stated that was common, that I was stronger than expected, and that my evidence would help Brad face punishment. Willing to believe her, I practiced my testimony at home to prepare for the day I had to look at Brad and tell a courtroom full of strangers what he'd done to me. Marie started receiving Brad's relatives' mail. His aunt sent a long letter, calling her a traitor for testifying against her son. Marie persevered despite her sorrow. His cousin called and blasted her for destroying Brad's reputation. How could she back me over her blood? I admired her bravery. She lost long-standing friends, but she never stopped supporting me and fighting Brad. True family doesn't hide violence. Brad broke the restraining order and sent 2 emails to my new work address, one apologizing for missing me and wanting to fix things, and the other an hour later, enraged, blaming me for everything and saying I destroyed his life on purpose. I emailed all 3 to my lawyer, who filed her motion the next day. The police detained Brad that night for restraining order violation. He sent 5 more emails, each worse. The next morning, the judge reviewed emails and pestering trend and denied Brad's bail, claiming he couldn't follow court orders and was a menace to me. Sebastian skipped bail, possibly seeing his brother's true personality. After months in jail, I slept through the night without jumping at sounds, checking locks 3 times, or expecting for him to return home angry. Marie noted I was rested at 7 a.m. You look better. I smiled. I feel better. She grabbed my hand across the table and said, You're eating more, too. Food tasted good again, my stomach wasn't full of rocks, and I could breathe without chest tightness and imagine tomorrow without fear. Brad couldn't reach me. The judge prevented me from emailing or leaving work. At Marie's house, I slept with my bedroom door open and left my phone in the kitchen overnight. My hope was fragile but true. Maybe I was secure now. Megan contacted Marie 2 weeks later to meet for coffee. I remembered her from company dinner, when she was 3 seats down when Brad hit me and testified with her spouse about what they saw. I met her Saturday morning at a coffee shop near my new job. She received 2 coffees at a corner table. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I got you a vanilla latte. That's perfect. I sat as she said, I wanted to tell you something about why I testified. My first husband hit me 2 years ago before I met Hudson. Megan stirred her coffee without sipping. No one saw it then. He took care to hit me where clothes would cover injuries. When Brad hit you in front of everyone, I had to speak up. Be the witness I never had. She had moist eyes. Your report him gave me closure on my history. I felt like my sorrow mattered if it helped me understand yours. I held her hand across the table and smiled. Thank you for telling the truth. We became friends and met weekly for coffee. I met other women from her support group. Women who had experienced what I did and knew the dread of being injured by someone you love encouraged me without judgment and shared their stories of finally leaving and healing after Brad raped me at dinner. My attorney called 3 weeks before trial to provide Brad's divorce finances. Her voice was tense. How bad? Worse than expected. He opened personal accounts only for 2 years and owes $30,000 from credit cards you didn't know about. My stomach dropped. He owned the cards and concealed them. It's fraud. I felt terrible thinking about it. 2 years of secret debt while he monitored my expenditure. Complained when I bought him unsuitable groceries. I had to disclose every purchase. He spent thousands on cards I didn't know about. Attorney kept talking. He cannot touch your earnings or savings. Can't say you owe half his concealed debt. She paused when I asked about his spending. Mostly gambling, online poker sites, sports betting, some cash advances we can't track. Brad lied about the debt and shamed me for wanting to work while controlling our money. The foreclosure notification arrived in May. 3 weeks until the house auction. One afternoon after work, I drove by. Lawn overgrowth painted shutters. It looked abandoned. Marie and I attended the auction. Bidders were in the back of the courthouse. Marie fretted as I saw our house sell for $80,000 less than the mortgage. Banks absorbed the difference. Are you okay? I'm fine. That was your home for 8 years. Shaking my head, never home. Just a scary area. Brad ruled everything. Where I walked on eggshells to avoid annoying him. Losing doesn't hurt. I felt Marie's grip after weeks of saying, the house was another bond to Brad. That letting go was free. I knew in that auction chamber. Brad used buildings and the mortgage to imprison me and tell me we'd lose everything if I left. After it was gone, I felt lighter and less influenced by him. I didn't look back after leaving the courthouse. My therapist's office had comfy chairs and soothing lighting, and we never discussed unfinished topics. We addressed guilt first, my inner voice telling me I should have left sooner and noticed signs. Smarter or stronger? She inquired about Brad's first hit. I told her about our dinner dispute 3 years into our marriage. He apologized, sobbed, and pledged never to do it again. Got me flowers. Sweet for months. She nodded. It's the abuse cycle. Violence, remorse, and honeymoon. It is meant to make you hope things will improve, but they never do. Violence always returns. Though I understood, hearing her explain helped. She said abusers are great manipulators, preying on love and stability. They degrade victims' self-esteem and isolate them, making leaving impossible. You survived and left stronger. Most sessions released years of pain and dread, as well as fury at myself for wasting time, following Brad's promises, and thinking I could cure him with more work. I forgave myself for the lost years after my therapist helped me recognize that Brad made choices and that his aggression was about control, not me. The criminal trial began on Tuesday. Marie bought me a professional yet casual navy dress. My attorney met me outside court. You ready? Brad sat at the defense table in an ill-fitting suit as the prosecutor opened with the business dinner attack, the pattern of violence, and Marie's intervention. My testimony came first. Shaking legs, I reached the stand. The prosecution asked about the March corporate meal. I told them about Brad's nonchalance at the joke. Smack. And blood. Brad's lawyer objected to my story of him shoving me onto the kitchen counter, grabbing my throat, and smashing the wall near my head. Hearsay. Judge ruled, the witness is testifying to her own experience. Continue. Marie stopped him that night. He kept hitting my heads back. Prosecutor showed trauma photos and requested identity. I look like it 2 days later. The prosecution protested when Brad's lawyer cross-examined me, stating I overstated everything, mean to ruin Brad by going to HR, and wanted his job and money. Your Honor, this is victim blaming. Judge upheld. Counselor, ask about case facts. Brad's lawyer recanted, saying I was untrustworthy and had hidden motives. Marie, shivering, testified the next day with her handbag in her lap in a modest black outfit. The prosecutor asked her to describe what she observed when she arrived at our house that night. I entered with my key. From the kitchen, weeping. Found Brad continually assaulting my daughter-in-law. On the floor. He kept going despite her pleading. Marie said through sobs. I whacked him with the stove's frying pan. I had to. He would gravely injure her. Maybe kill her. I saw his fury in his face. Marie spoke clearly and powerfully. Brad's lawyer tried to undermine her in cross-examination. Have you always valued your daughter-in-law over your son? Marie watched him. I prefer protecting innocents to aiding perpetrators. Even if my son abuses. You harmed your son, lawyer repeated. That's assault. Marie kept her cool. I prevented him from killing. Would do again. The prosecutor grins. No further questions. Hudson testified about the corporate meal, my innocent joke, how everyone laughed, Brad's countenance changing, and how he smacked her in the mouth, causing her to bleed. Brad chuckled. Joked about spanking his wife. Megan testified next, detailing the blood, the red mark on my cheek, how Brad squeezed my shoulder hard enough to bruise it, and how uncomfortable everyone was, yet nobody did anything except to change the subject. Do you doubt what you saw? Asked the prosecutor. None. She was hit in front of 8 persons. Brad's lawyer questioned their evidence. Can't you be wrong? Maybe it was a joke tap. Hudson called him stupid. I know a fun tap from a man splitting his wife's lip. It's clear. Megan said. Multiple witnesses saw the same thing because it happened exactly how we're describing it. Attorney rested case. Verified testimony, photos, and medical records. Brad's dismissal papers. Trend clear. His lawyer wanted Brad's account from his morning testimony. Brad put everything on me. She tried to ruin my career at work. She realized the consequences of reporting the dinner. She wanted my job gone. The prosecutor objected, but the judge allowed him. Brad persisted. I was stressed out. 15 years with their firm. She repeatedly provoked me. Made fun of me. Discredited me in front of coworkers. I snapped. It was wrong, but she's not innocent. His lawyer asked about our house attack. Brad said I assaulted him first. Marie saw the fight stop, and he was protecting himself. Prosecutor destroyed him on cross-examination. Jury seemed skeptical. Mr. Hamilton, you said your wife provoked you. She said what to cause physical violence? She was always criticizing me. Brad stammered. So criticism justifies hitting? Brad defended himself. You don't understand the pressure I was under. Answer the question. Does criticism justify beating your wife? No. But, so you hit her without justification. I didn't say that. The prosecutor showed his termination papers. You were fired for abuse of your spouse. You claimed your employer provoked you. Said HR she always provoked you. Told brother she provoked you. See a pattern? She did provoke me. Brad blushed. How often have you hit your wife in your marriage? Brad paused. No idea. More than 5 times? Yes. More than 10? Probably. The prosecutor faced the jury. This was a repeat error. This brutality persisted for years. Brad tried to recover, but I never meant to really hurt her. You publicly split her lip. You beat her at home until your mother intervened. That's not malicious. A shocked jury. The jury deliberation lasted 2 hours and 45 minutes. Marie and I waited in the hallway outside the courthouse. Our attorney brought coffee. They're coming back. Re-entering, jury foreman stood. We find the defendant guilty of domestic assault. Brad blanched as the judge applauded the jurors and set punishment for 2 weeks. He was detained and led away. I stared back unsurprised. Marie comforted me as I cried in court. This is over. He can't damage you more. Prosecutor followed. Good testimony. Be proud. Tears hampered, thank you. My arm was squeezed. You'll be fine. Marie held my hand in court 2 weeks later during my punishment hearing. I had never trusted her before. As she reviewed Brad's file, she looked up and saw him in his orange jumpsuit and shackles. The judge claimed his violence grew because nobody stopped him. Adds, when people see abuse and do nothing, it tells the abuser he can keep going. Most of his coworkers denied seeing him beat me at the corporate dinner, but she said he attacked me at home and would have continued if his mother hadn't interfered. The judge sentenced Brad to 18 months in jail, then 3 years on probation with weekly anger management and domestic violence counseling. The judge promptly denied Brad's lawyer's request for less time. He was lucky. I focused on Brad as the officers dragged him away. His eyes were filled with hatred and blame. Hands stopped shaking. After Brad's sentencing, my lawyer filed the divorce paperwork. Brad fought nothing in jail. I attended his last hearing 2 weeks after his imprisonment. Brad was absent. Lawyer represented him and agreed to everything. I got the paid-off car. Our marriage ended when the court signed the papers, and I gave up 8 years of my life. I stood on the courthouse steps in the daylight, legally free. My lawyer congratulated and shook my hand. I drove to Marie's house to preserve my one marriage item. I sat in her driveway for a moment. No more Brad. No more tiptoeing. Stop wondering when he'll crack. My car cries were calming. The next day, Marie let me stay as long as I needed, but I wanted my own home. I discovered a little one-bedroom near work with low rent due to the building's age and terrible area. Megan moved me in using church financing, a couch being sold, a kitchen table with mismatched seats, thrift store plates and pots, and Marie's old TV and lighting. Hudson and Megan left cartons of unwanted kitchen items. I got a furnished apartment in 2 days that looked like a college dorm. I bought and installed new door locks and bathroom locks, hung curtains on all windows to block view, and arranged the furniture so I could see the door from anywhere in the main room. The therapist said this was normal. After years of feeling uneasy, I built an inexpensive bookcase and filled it with library sale books. I put a calendar on the wall to track Brad's release date, which is over a year away. My first night alone in my flat, I locked and checked the door 3 times and secured all windows. Sitting on my given couch, I scanned my small space. No one could damage me here. I slept better than in months. 3 months into my career, my employer called me into her office. I feared trouble. She offered me a raise and more duties, saying I worked accurately and reliably. She asked me to help with monthly reporting and teach the new hire next week. I agreed immediately. It was only 50 cents an hour, but the rise felt significant. She advised I take local community college online accounting classes, so I perused the brochures at home that night. Brad always told me to be grateful he made enough money for us, and that I wasn't smart enough for accounting. I signed up for 2 cheap classes next month, Simple Accounting and Excel for Business. I set up a laptop workstation in my flat corner, printed the syllabi, and bound them. Brad convinced me I didn't need a career while rebuilding my. Every project was like reclaiming a piece of myself he stole. Marie and I had dinner every Tuesday night at her house, discussed our weeks while she cooked, attended support group monthly, and volunteered at the domestic abuse shelter on weekends. Marie told me she'd be speaking at a domestic violence awareness event on Tuesday. She provided clothes and home items and assisted intake interviews. She stated using her grief let her feel less bad about not identifying Brad's abuse sooner. I supported her as she stood in front of 50 people, and told them about hitting Brad with that frying pan, choosing to believe me over her son, her remorse, anguish, and confidence that she'd done the right thing. Marie gave her number and said to call anytime. She'd found her calling, as did we. 6 months after the trial, Megan invited me to her book group. I was nervous about meeting new people and talking about my past. The book club met every other Thursday at members' houses. Megan claimed they were lovely women who kept to themselves. They asked what books I liked and gave me wine. I didn't read the mystery novel we discussed. After the book discussion, they talked about kids, careers, recipes, and vacations. Nobody asked about my divorce, new work, or move. It was my most typical social contact in years. Megan took me to my car. She said she told the group I was reconstructing my life and they didn't understand many questions. I thanked and hugged her. At the next book club meeting, I read the book first, discussed, laughed at the lame plot twist joke, and cleaned up late. When Sebastian and I met in the grocery store on Saturday morning, someone called my name as I checked coffee prices. I turned and saw Brad's brother, who called me dramatic, and asked me to help him clean up. I thought about abandoning my cart and leaving when Sebastian seemed smaller and advanced slowly, hands visible, worried I'd bolt. He apologized, said he'd been seeing Brad in jail every month, and saw what everyone else saw. His manipulative brother evaded responsibility. Brad blamed me, his job, or stress every visit, and never confessed wrongdoing. Sebastian observed how Brad had always been, how he handled girlfriends before me, and how he talked about women. Sebastian apologized for not believing me, pressuring me to help Brad, and helping too. To conclude, I thanked him for his apologies but told him I wasn't ready for him and wanted to maintain boundaries with Brad's family. Sebastian nodded expectantly and said he understood and wouldn't disturb me again. Seeing him depart transformed me. My therapy focused on relationship warning signs I missed with Brad. He isolated me from friends, controlled money and decisions, blamed me for his feelings, and made me doubt myself with subtle put-downs. She said I had good intuition, but Brad had taught me to distrust it for years. We practiced setting boundaries, recognizing when someone was testing my limits, and saying no without over-explaining or apologizing. She showed me healthy people accept limits without debate. We discussed good partnerships, partners who support your goals, people who take responsibility for their actions, and open communication. My therapist said I'd improved considerably. She believed I could live without dread dictating my decisions. Panic episodes diminished. Days went by without thinking about Brad. I slept and ate well. Small wins piled up to life. His lawyer released Brad early for good behavior after 12 months. My victim advocate called me beforehand to examine his probation. 2 weekly therapy. No contact. Random probation officer visits. Anyone who broke a condition was sent back to jail. I became concerned as Brad's release approached, checking my locks more regularly and looking over my shoulder in parking lots. My therapist stated I now had legal rights, a support system, resources, and people who believed me. Brad couldn't visit me and hurt me without consequences. Release day passed with no calls, messages, or sightings. A week later, my probation supervisor confirmed Brad had checked in and satisfied all terms. He worked at a warehouse across town and lived in a small apartment, avoiding me. I caught my breath after a week and relaxed gently. He left, but he couldn't affect my new life. After 9 months, my boss called me into her office to offer me a promotion to senior accounting associate, which would mean a huge salary increase, a small office instead of a cubicle, and 2 junior associates under my control. She said I was reliable, competent, and detail-oriented, and I accepted immediately and returned to my cubicle trying not to cry. I built a career from nothing while healing from years of abuse. The promotion came with business cards, of which I held one. Brad spent years telling me I wasn't smart enough for meaningful work, to be grateful for his support, and that I'd never succeed alone. Since he was fired, I was making more than him and supporting myself instead of just surviving. I posted the business card on my fridge to remind myself that I built this life, and was as capable as I thought before Brad spent years convincing me otherwise. I called Marie that night to announce the promotion. The officer informed Marie that Brad attended counseling, and passed random check-ins 3 weeks into Brad's probation. Marie was a contact, so the police checked up on her. Brad worked loading trucks at a warehouse, and rented a tiny flat near the industrial park across town. Marie's warning let me relax my shoulders for the first time in weeks. Knowing Brad's whereabouts and monitoring made the world safer. He wasn't hiding or coming to my flat. The year I left Marie's house for my own apartment passed, and survivors spoke on stage at the downtown Domestic Abuse Awareness Center. My therapist gave me the flyer, and Megan phoned me that day. Are you going? I might volunteer to organize. The week after, Megan and I met the coordinator, who needed volunteers to greet participants, give supplies, and console distraught survivors during speeches. The night of the event, we distributed programs and resource packs at the welcome table. Nervous women arrived alone and with friends. Megan grabbed my hand when a young woman cried while reading shelter information. We both learned that you're not insane or weak, that your experience has a name, and that others survived. Megan and I cleaned up after the presentations. The coordinator asked for regular volunteering. They held twice monthly support sessions for escaped survivors. We agreed. The coffee shop near my apartment hosted book club every other Thursday for 6 months. We read mysteries and autobiographies. Tom, who usually brought homemade cookies, asked nice questions and left one meeting at the same time as me. Our cars were next to one other. He offered me to dinner, and I hesitated but said okay but advised him to relax. He laughed and agreed. After coffee, we had lunch. I addressed Brad on our third date. Tom listened without interruption, complimented me for being honest, and offered to go at my pace. Dating again scared me, but my therapist said I knew what healthy looked like and could spot manipulation. Tom never pushed or got irritated when I said I wasn't ready. Every limit I set was respected. It started weird, then felt right. Marie invited me to Sunday supper at her house. 2 Brad's aunts were there when I arrived. Marie took my hand and pulled me in as I almost left. My aunts hugged and apologized for not trusting me sooner and assuming I exaggerated or made complications. One said she spoke to Brad in jail and understood Marie's. The other aunt said seeing me confront Brad gave her daughter the strength to leave an abusive marriage last year. Marie made pot roast while we chatted at her table. Some Brad's family avoided Marie. Marie told me she was okay with ending abusive relationships and that real family protects victims, not abusers. My eyes watered. She chose me over her son. It meant everything. Brad's probation officer called my victim advocate 18 months after his release. He served his time in probation without incident and showed significant progress in taking responsibility, according to his counselor. Want more information? I answered no. Staying away and rebuilding my life without Brad mattered more to me than his atonement. His sanctions were about justice and accountability, not forgiving him. The advocate understood. She advised survivors to know their abuser changed. Others needed security. My species was second. 2 years after leaving Brad, I looked at everything I'd built. Company recognized my senior accountant job. Healthy, equal relationship with Tom. Therapy to absorb trauma instead of just surviving. Supportive friends. I owned my life. I still had bad days. I glanced over my shoulder in parking lots and cringed at loud noises. My therapist said it was normal. Trauma leaves traces after recovery. I no longer had anxiety, had management tools, and someone to call when things became worse. Safety felt familiar, not walking on eggshells to prevent the next outburst. I completely restored my life. Tom and I sat on my couch 6 months later. He was nervous, as his eyeglass adjustment showed. He asked me to marry him with a tiny box. I looked at the ring, a silver bracelet with a diamond. Like Tom, it was simple and real. When I told Marie, she cried. She wanted to come. Invited, Megan and Hudson. I had few close coworkers. Thomas's parents, sister. No big celebration, no fancy setting. Celebrating something nice with key people. Tom knew my story, even the awful parts, and loved me, nevertheless. The wedding honored survival, and showed Brad didn't write my story. Marie helped me get dressed in the small room behind the courtroom where we'd marry. Marie combed my hair and straightened my plain white sundress as we cried down the short aisle. She said she was proud of my fortitude and glad she had the guts and time to help. I stopped going and faced her, telling her the frying pan saved my life that night and that I wouldn't be here without her. We hugged in the aisle as everyone watched, and after she kissed my cheek, I went toward Tom, my future, and everything Brad tried to take from. Marriage to Tom was different from Brad. Tom asked for my advice about meals and housing. We talked disagreements instead of trying to win. He praised my promotions and job goals. I supported his return to school for his teaching certificate. We made a household where neither of us walked on eggshells or worried about the other's reaction. Finally, I saw healthy love, respect, equality, and two people choosing each other every day because they wanted to. The domestic abuse shelter requested me to speak at volunteer training. Megan and I conducted support groups for newly fled survivors for 6 months, helping them navigate restraining orders, divorce, and housing. I spoke to 30 volunteers about Brad's career-ending public slap, Marie's frying pan intervention, and rebuilding my life. After I ended, a young woman asked how I departed. I told Megan my confidence was lacking, but staying was worse than leaving, so I did it despite my dread. She distributed materials and answered questions. Making my sorrow significant was the best way to reclaim my story. Brad tried to kill me. After 3 years, domestic abuse shelter personnel contacted me. A woman asked about resources and named her husband at admission. Brad. Counselor told I should know he remarried. I thought about that for a day. I was relieved he was gone but worried about her. Her name and background were unknown, but I knew what she lived with. The counselor asked for contact. I declined. My anonymous packet went to every domestic violence resource in Brad's region. I mailed 3 groups his full background: business dinner, firing, arrests, conviction, and everything on public record. His new wife should see a pattern. She had to realize what was happening and escape. I couldn't save someone unaware she needed saving when my manager called me into her office Tuesday morning because I botched a report. Instead, she gave me the accounting manager role, supervising 4 people. Brad earned $60,000 a year, more than he did at that company in 15 years. I accepted quickly, and called my wife from the parking lot. After celebrating that night, we looked online for small, affordable residences. 20 minutes from my business, we found a 2-bedroom cabin with good bones but needed renovation. Our offer was accepted within a week, and Marie and Megan helped move in 2 months later. When we made it, it felt like home. Nowhere I stepped softly. Where I could breathe. Marie came over for supper on an October Saturday 5 years after hitting Brad with a frying pan. She brought wine, I made spaghetti, and we watched the sunset on my back patio. My hand was held and she said night changed everything for us. She talked at community gatherings about not enabling abusive family members and about saving me instead of her son until she couldn't. People listened because she wasn't a victim, but a mother who waited too long to intervene. We converted misery into purpose and power. Used our darkest experiences to serve others. That beat Brad utterly. At that business meal, Brad slapped me in public. It felt like the end of the world, facial bleeding, everyone watching, shame stinging me. But it was the beginning of my liberation. I stopped hiding and fought back. If he'd hit me at home as always, I might have stayed and trusted his justifications and vows to change. But you gave me witnesses and the push to denounce him and leave. I'm proud of my survival, not grateful for mistreatment. I'm happier than I thought I could be married to Brad. His attempt to ruin me failed, and I'm going forward. He's a bad memory that fades daily. My family ignored me for years, but when I got promoted and made more money, they took an interest. They even took my dog and threatened to sell him if I didn't pay $75,000. I bought their house for $250,000 to teach them a lesson. I was 32 and carrying a $20 craft drink in my folks' living room last August. Nobody cared. Dad refused to admit that his hearing was failing, so Tiger's game blared at maximum volume. My brother Luke filmed another TikTok about his entrepreneur grind, Dropshipping Alibaba trash at 400% markup to fools who didn't know better. My largest career promotion came recently. Senior network architect, Fortune 100 cybersecurity firm, remote, $200,000 base plus equity, Austin move. They're promoting me to senior architect. I shouted over the TV. Nobody saw, moving me to Texas. $200,000 base. Not dad riveted to his recliner. Not mom Facebooking. Likely reacting to Luke's new hustle post. Not Luke, changing his ring light for authentic struggle lighting. I took a long swallow from my drink, the same one I'd had for 6 years but received no recognition, and felt something click in my chest. They didn't care. Early on, I realized I was the spare tire, the child who made Luke appear better. They held my 9th birthday celebration in the garage. Luke needed his YouTube setup at home. Skateboard tricks for 47 subscribers. Near power equipment. I ate grocery store cake. Mom peered in. Be patient. Honey. Luke's building his brand. Yes. I was less important. I finished second in state math at 13. Mom and dad watched Luke film for his 83 subscriber channel for 6 months, using 2 buses. I brought home a governor-signed trophy, medal, and certificate. Dad entered talking to Luke on his phone about lights. Cool, bud. No glance. Luke needs help with this rig. His channel's about to blow up. Got a sponsor interested for 83 subscribers. It was a dream. Luke is building something real, Dad, Ryan, I later. A week passed with the trophy on the kitchen table. No one inquired. I moved it to my room. I became the family handyman. Router, laptop. Luke's dropshipping site, 3 weeks of partying coding. Thanks with a fist bump. He commented on Instagram about grinding alone. No handouts, only hustle. Website I developed for free. Thanksgiving. Luke arrived 4 hours late. Long Instagram live feed. We waited as the turkey leatherized. He arrived in designer gear. He was nearly tackled by Mom. Sweetheart. You work so hard. Sit down. Ryan. Fix your brother a plate. I was seated. Hungry. And fatigued from helping Dad smoke that turkey since 4 a.m. I stood up, made his plate, gave him breast meat, and took the unpopular dry wings. Mom sent him the nicest leftovers and gave me margarine dregs. He's got a son to feed. You're single. You don't need as much. I said. I was breaking inside. When I got the architect job, I booked Giorgio's, an expensive Italian restaurant. Invited everyone 3 weeks ahead. Confirmed twice. They arrived, but not for me. Mom took out her phone before I completed my appetizer. Assisted Luke in commercial kitchen research. He interrupted me when I detailed sensitive federal contracts, infrastructure, and genuine work. Luke's meal prep square footage keeps coming up. Dad requested the bill before the meal. Not skipping the Lions game for expensive spaghetti. 35 minutes. I have nothing else. Paid $400. I left 30% since the waiter appeared uncomfortable. Work consumed me after that. Secure architecture. Remote work let me go anyplace. After accepting the Austin offer, I felt something unfamiliar in years. Control. That August Saturday followed. Michigan heat. House smells old carpet and desperate. Mom pursuing Luke's son while Luke videotaped TikTok entrepreneur. Dad half watching baseball. I opened my drink and spoke clearly. They promoted me to senior architect. Moving to Austin. $200,000 base plus equity. The announcer shouted out a strikeout. No one looked up. Standing there, condensation dripped on my hand. I felt no pain for the first time. I felt clear. I could leave, and this house would sound the same. That was encouraging. My life fit inside a 16-footer 6 weeks later. You don't accumulate much when invisible. I left a family group chat message the night before I left. Red receipts showed they saw leaving tomorrow morning. New job starts Monday. Austin bound. Mom. Dad. Luke. In the morning. Nothing. I left at 5:15 a.m. I loaded the truck. Dad had back pain. Mom ran errands. Luke ignored my text about leaving the furnishings. Mom texted halfway across Tennessee. We need you home this weekend. Luke's moving inventory to a new warehouse. Heavy lifting. Like I drove to Home Depot instead of traveling 1,500 miles. It was erased. Blocked family chat. Keep driving. My Austin apartment was downtown. The 23rd story included floor-to-ceiling windows, 2 beds, and quiet central air. $2,500, month. Mine. The first night, I ate pizza from the box on the floor while admiring the city lights. No one called for the router password. No one texted for furniture moving help. Never did silence sound so wonderful. A rhythm developed in the following months. Running Ladybird Lake in the morning. Homework with competent coworkers that prioritized work above family. My team secured billion-dollar networks, hospitals, power grids, banking systems, and other vital work. I then found Max, a 95-pound Belgian Malinois mix with loyalty, shivering in a shelter kennel. The volunteer reported 3 returns. 2 dog-like, protective, and intense. That feeling was mine. That afternoon, took him home. I met Sarah that way. Evening dog park on Wednesday. Zeus, Max, and her Doberman played. That gruff, roaring, pleasant yet seemingly brutal play. Your dog's a beast. She laughed. Yes, that's what's up. A woman who recognized her worth and didn't bargain. She managed startup operations. Logistics. Supply chain, the unsung work that keeps companies running. Meetup began after work. Slowly, dogs became inseparable. So did we. Sarah, let me talk about work without bragging. She heard, remembered, and asked questions days later. She texted, how'd that penetration test go? Randomly on Thursdays. She recalled. Holy crap, my address was found by the ghost. Sunday morning text. Family BBQ Saturday. Dad's turning 62. Start setting up tables and chairs early. No query. No, we miss you. Just anticipate. I showed Sarah. You going? No. Good. They don't deserve your time. The next day, the conversation escalated. Missed calls, guilt texts. Even Luke. Dad's upset you bailed. Not cool, man. From the guy who missed my college graduation for a $250 pop-up shop. 3 years melted away. Extra promos. Hit $220,000. New friends that cared. My flat became home. Max took a couch space. Near my door were Sarah's running shoes. I thought my past had ceased seeking me. Tyler, my cousin, stayed on my couch for 2 nights. My house was perfectly lit last morning. Open brick, leather, sofa, TV mount, weight configuration. Max lay on his dog bed. Tyler took out his phone. Dude. This setup is sick. Can I post it? Go ahead. He took a photo with caption. At my cousin Ryan's Austin house. Instagrammed. Man built something worth respecting. It escaped my attention. I didn't realize that one post, 412 likes in 3 hours, would break every threshold. The next morning, my phone was full of notifications from long-lost relatives. I was asked what I made currently. Others asking if I bought or rented. That furniture looks expensive. Cousins I barely knew emojis of fire and killing it. Mom said, so proud of our Ryan. Always knew he'd succeed. We raised him to be independent and driven. Our word tasted like gasoline. Where was he during the math competition, the promotion dinner, the move? He showed up when there was something to photograph. The first text arrived at 11:47 p.m. Thursday. 3 years of near stillness had Mom anxious. Tyler's post had 500 plus likes after 72 hours, which was viral in my family. Luke gave me photographs of your apartment before I could react. Second SMS. Very impressive. You must be doing extremely well financially. The real conversation. Mom missed 6 calls, Dad 3, Luke 2 by morning. Dad left an 8-second voicemail. Call your mother back. Family business. I called Saturday afternoon. Stew them. Mom answered with forced joy. Oh, sweetheart, finally. We were considering visiting. No, I replied. Silence. Not what she expected. Excuse me? I add, no. You're not visiting. I moved 1,500 miles away for a reason. You want to talk? We can do it over the phone. Ryan, we're your family. Family that ignored me for 3 years until Tyler posted my apartment online. So, no, you're not coming to Austin. We already booked the flights, she added in a frigid tone. I tightened my jaw. Saturday morning, 4 of us. Then cancel them. I'm not hosting you. It's non-refundable, she added. Her problem. We'll be there at 11. We can talk then. Mom. I'm telling you right now. The line ended. I regarded my phone. Rage rising. She booked flights without asking. She now pretended my refusal didn't matter. Sarah looked up from her laptop. What happened? They booked flights to Austin. I told them not to come. So don't let them in, she added. That's the plan. My family knew. They wouldn't accept no. People would show up and cause a commotion until I caved. This time, no. Saturday arrived. I was ready. Doorbell rang 11:20 a.m. Even while forcing me, late. I peeked through all 4 peepholes. Mom handing a Starbucks bag for peace. Dad with cheap sodas. James and Luke appear exhausted and bewildered. I opened the door but blocked entry with my body. Just, I told you not to come, I said. Smile faded on Mom. We flew all this way without my permission. That's not my problem. Ryan. We're family. Dad pushed past me. I stayed put. Family that ignored me for 3 years. You're not coming in. Luke stepped forward, threatening. Bro, we flew here. Stop being a jerk and let us in. Or what? What? I responded coldly. You'll force your way into my home. Mom gasped. We just want to see you. You want something. And seeing me is the price of admission. I'm not interested. James scared at Luke's sleeve. Kid didn't deserve this, but I wasn't responsible for his parents' actions. Mom's voice faltered. Please, sweetheart, we came all this way. Just let us in for a few minutes. I saw them all in my hallway with bags, expectations, and his usual entitlement. I almost slammed the door, but I knew they wouldn't leave. They'd make a scene in the hallway and upset my neighbors. Fine. Wanted in. 2 hours were guaranteed. Then they left. 2 hours. I said. You have 2 hours, then leave. Mom smiled. Of course, sweetie. I mean it. 2 hours. Not negotiable. Stepped aside. Like locusts, they invaded my space quickly. Mom walked past wearing too much perfume, inspecting my apartment like an appraiser, touching my stuff and mentally verifying price tags. Oh, sweetheart, look at you, she murmured. But her eyes calculated square footage and rent. This is lovely. Very upscale. What's the rent on a place like this? Or, how much money do you have? Dad offered inexpensive sodas. Cheapest stuff possible. I drank good cocktails for years. He never remembered. Brought drinks for the game, he remarked, searching for my TV, making my house his sports bar. Phone out, Luke came last, definitely filming his Instagram story. Yo, nice place. What's the square footage? Like 1,400 downtown Austin. This has to be $2,800 a month minimum. Or did you buy? Because if you bought. I interrupted. Don't. Sharp voice, you're here for 2 hours. Don't spend it calculating my net worth. His smile sank. James ran inside without permission. Touched everything. Grabbed my TV remote and jumped on the couch. Max went to bed, tail down. Checked my watch. Started timer. We went to the living room. Dad grabbed my TV remote, located the Tigers game, and turned it up without asking. No one asked me to watch baseball. Mom began questioning me on my $3,500 leather sectional couch. So, what's your salary now? You must be doing quite well to afford all this. Right on. No pretension. I said, I'm comfortable, jaw clenched. Luke made that phony fishing sound and laughed. Incorrect. Come on. Man. You got to be clearing $220,000 minimum with equity, maybe $270,000 total comp. Why does it matter? Just curious, bro. Trying to understand the network architect game seems lucrative. It is, responded I. When you actually finish your degree and work for it. Lie. Sharp. Uncomfortable. Mom faked laughter. No need to be rude, honey. I'm not being rude. I'm being honest. Something this family struggles with. Luke flushed. You know what? I came here thinking we could reconnect. You came here because Tyler posted my apartment and you realized I have money. Let's not pretend this is about brotherhood. James kept leaping on my stuff. I asked him twice to stop. He ignored me. James. I insisted. Last warning. Sit down or play quietly in the corner. Stop jumping on my furniture. Mom's face tensed. He's 7. He has energy. He can have energy without breaking my stuff. Don't talk that way around my son. Luke said. Then control your son in my home. I replied. Tension was high. My lack of hospitality offended Mom. Dad watched TV like a coward. Luke scrolled his phone, perhaps writing about his poisonous brother to his followers. After 30 minutes, I was done. Mom persisted. Is Sarah paying half the rent? Are you two basically living together? That's none of your business. I'm asking, dear, but not answering. Luke looked up from his phone. Bro, you've changed. You used to be chill. I used to be a doormat, I said. I'm done with that. See? Luke said. This attitude, this is what I'm talking about. You're acting like we're strangers. We are strangers, I said. You haven't texted me in 3 years. Don't know where I work. Don't know who I date. Don't know anything about my life. That's the definition of strangers. Mom flinched. That's not fair. I interrupted. It's accurate. You want to know what's not fair? Flying here uninvited after I explicitly told you not to come. That's not fair. Dad eventually said, facing the TV. We're your parents. We can visit our son. Not without permission. You can't. After an hour, actual talk began. Mom sat forward on the couch, hands folded. Expression practice. Your father and I have been thinking about Luke's situation. Stop, I said. Whatever this is. No. You haven't even heard. Don't need to. The answer's no. Luke put his phone down. Bro. Just listen. I add. No. I'm not funding your next failure. I'm not bailing out Mom and Dad's terrible decisions. I'm not your emergency fund. Mom's eyes widened. How dare you? How dare I what? Have boundaries? Refuse to enable your golden child? Actually expect to be treated like family instead of a checkbook. We raised you? No. Coldly, I cut her off. You raised Luke. I raised myself. Big difference. Luke stood up. Furious. You're really going to sit there acting like you had it so hard. You got everything. Name one thing, I said. One thing they gave me that they didn't give you first. One time they put me first. One sacrifice they made for me. Silence. Deathly silence. Saying, that's what I thought, checked my watch. An hour and 40 minutes. 20 minutes left. But I was done. Time's up. I stood. You need to leave. Evan. We haven't. Mom. Began. I don't care. You came here uninvited. I gave you 2 hours out of courtesy. Now you're leaving. We flew all this way. Your choice. Your problem, not mine. I entered the door. Out. Luke grabbed James, furious and humiliated. You're really going to do this? I really am. Doors open. Use it. Mom stood up, crying to manipulate emotions. After everything we've done for you. I asked. Like what? Specifically, name one thing, one sacrifice. She couldn't. Standing there, mouth expanding and closing. Saying, that's what I thought. Leave. Dad stood and grabbed his jacket. You've become cruel. No. I answered. I became honest, and you can't handle it. Luke remained at the entrance. We came here to ask for your help. I know, I answered. That's why you came. That's the only reason you came. And that's exactly why the answer is no. Luke's in trouble, Mom shouted. Real trouble. He owes money. Not my problem, I said. He's an adult. He made choices. He can face consequences. He could lose everything. Good. I said. Maybe he'll learn something. Luke grew pallid. You're really going to let me fail? I clarified, I'll let you experience reality. Something Mom and Dad never did. Consider it a gift. This is messed up. No. I stopped him. What's messed up is showing up uninvited, treating my home like an ATM, and expecting me to fund your delusions. What's messed up is 3 years of silence, followed by demands for money. What's messed up is using a 7-year-old as emotional leverage. James cried, puzzled and afraid. Luke. I whispered. Take your son and leave. Don't contact me again unless you're ready to actually apologize. Not the kind where you're sorry I'm upset. The kind where you're sorry for what you did. He grabbed James and left. Mom tried again. Evan. Please. Out. I said. She regarded Dad. While halfway to the elevator, he shook his head. They left. I latched and leaned against the door. Relieved, Max left the bedroom with a wag. The phone buzzed. How went it? Sarah. I said, exactly how I planned. Gave them 2 hours. Kicked them out when they asked for money. She said, proud of you. Want company tonight? I grinned. Yeah, bring Zeus. Dogs can celebrate, too. Looked around my apartment. Mine. Actually, mine. No guilt, no duty, no performance, just boundaries. I'd never felt better. I believed expelling them would finish it. Considered flying back to Michigan to heal and study. Was wrong. Sunday, 9:47 a.m. The doorbell rang again via the peephole. All three again. Desperate faces. A tired James. I didn't enter. Evan. The door muffled Mom's voice. We know you're in there. We need to talk. I remained mute. Waited. Evan, please. We flew all this way. We're staying in Austin until we work this out. Blood chilled. Staying in Austin? Open the door. Dad's harsh, demanding voice. I texted, you need to leave. I told you yesterday. Not interested in whatever you're selling. Mom's phone beeped. Saw her reading through the peephole. We're not leaving until you hear us out. She said through the door. Luke pounded it. Bro, stop being a coward. Open the door. Instead, I phoned building security. Yeah, I've got people harassing me in my hallway. They won't leave. Can you send someone up? A security guard arrived 5 minutes later. An expert had seen this before. Folks, you need to leave. Resident doesn't want you here. We're his family. Doesn't matter. This is private property. If you don't leave voluntarily, I'm calling the police. Mom texted after they left. We're not giving up. We're staying at a hotel near the domain. We'll be back. Blocked the number. Found another SMS from another number an hour later. This is your mother. Don't block me. We need to talk about this like adults. Blocked that too. Then came emails and Facebook messages. Then LinkedIn attempts. Luke tried to call me through Tyler, old high school buddies on social media, and my company's main line, citing a family emergency. Tuesday afternoon, HR phoned. Evan, we had someone call claiming to be your brother. Said there was a family emergency and he needed to reach you urgently. There's no emergency. Told. He's harassing me for money. If he calls again, don't transfer it. Understood. Just wanted to verify. Day 5. Took Max for an evening walk. Always took the same path. Return home via the tiny park and block. Nobody waited until it was too late. Luke emerged from behind a van. Dad behind him. Dad ripped Max's leash from me before I could respond. Luke pushed me back. Dad. A man who rarely spoke my whole life. He was wild-eyed. Desperate. Desperation ruins lives. What the? Luke said. Shut up. Differently. Ugly. Desperate. You want to play games? Fine. We'll play games. Dad was leaving with my dog. Max retreated, confused, and sobbing. Max. Starting after them. Luke blocked me. Right in my face. You'll listen. That money is needed. Either you pay $80,000 or we sell this dog tomorrow. One man buys working dogs. Cash. No queries. My hands shook. Rage, not fear. Don't try me. He grinned. Actually grinned. You have 48 hours. Why is the money or dog gone? Avoid calling the police. Max will be out of state without documents before they act. Never see him again. They drove off. My dog's face in the back window, gazing at me like I abandoned him. I stood on the sidewalk for ages. After going home, I contacted my lawyer and recounted everything, voice steady, mind busy. They stole my puppy and threatened to sell him if I don't pay. Theft and extortion. We must call police. I contacted 911 with the hotel name and Luke's plate number, but I didn't file a formal complaint until we confirmed their presence. If I press too much, they run and the dog disappears. Smart. What else? How much debt do my parents have? The home? Everything. Silence. Then I can search. Public records. Give me a few hours. I waited. The findings arrived at 11 p.m. Parents' second mortgage. 9.5% interest on $95,000. Already 2 months behind. After 90 days, foreclosure would begin. The house was valued $250,000. Debt $210,000 total. Fees and penalties reduce equity $40,000 day. Luke's business owes 6 debtors $70,000. Personal guarantees on everything. Mom and Dad pledged their home for $35,000 of his supplier debt. It was 60 days till they lost everything. Their worst error ever. The next morning, Luke texted. A ticking clock. 36 hours. Avoid testing me. I remained silent. So I called my lawyer again. I want to buy my parents' house before the bank takes it. Cash for fair value. It's surprising. Hardball was their goal. Okay, I'll demonstrate hardball. I spent the following 24 hours planning, having my lawyer create the purchase offer, gathering cash, and calling a distressed property real estate agent. Mom called from a new number at 44. Ryan, please, Luke's serious. He found a buyer. They're coming tomorrow morning. I know, I answered. I pulled your foreclosure filing from the county records. By the way. Interesting timing. What? What? Check your email. I just sent you a purchase offer for the house. $250,000. Cash closes in 2 weeks. Dead quiet. You're what? I'm buying your house. The one you're about to lose because you co-signed Luke's disasters. Fair market value. More than the bank will give you at auction. Ryan, that's not. We don't want to sell. You don't have a choice, you're 2 months behind. Bank's going to take it anyway. I'm offering you a way out that doesn't destroy your credit completely. I paused. The offer expires in 72 hours, so if Luke sells, hurts, or doesn't return my puppy in immaculate shape, I pull it and give the bank everything. Watch your 2-year-old house go due to your golden child's ignorance. You can't. I can and I will. You wanted to play games with my dog? Fine. Now I'm playing games with your house. Your move. I hung up. My doorbell rang less than an hour later. Dad was alone when I opened it. Max on a leash near him. Maxim was home. That was no go. Dad looked broken. Avoiding my eyes. He gave me the leash and left without saying a word. Max leapt at me, tail wagging, licking my face. I held him long. I went inside and sent my lawyer the purchase agreement. They'll sign, I said. Make sure it's airtight because here's what they didn't understand. I wasn't buying their house to save them. I was buying it so they couldn't keep using it against me. The deal went as expected. Mom and Dad negotiated, added conditions, wanted to continue at below market rents, asked me to waive the debt, requested reasonableness. Reason didn't interest me. Fair market rent is $2,000, I told my lawyer. That's the number. They can pay it or they can leave. Their choice. They're claiming financial hardship, asking for $800. Then they can find somewhere else to live for $800. Not my property. Signed. Had no choice. A bank was already turning. Luke texted me the day the sale ended. You think you won something? You just bought yourself a landlord headache. Have fun dealing with Mom and Dad as tenants. Since he didn't know the plan, I smiled. I formally notified my parents 2 weeks after closing. No lease, month to month, $2,000 rent due on the 1st, $100 late fee after the 5th. After 30 days of non-payment, eviction begins. Crying mom called. You can't do this to us. We're your parents. You took my dog. I said. Threatened to sell him. Used him as a bargaining chip for money. You think I forgot that? That was Luke's idea. And you went along with it. Dad took the leash. You knew what was happening. You made your choice. Ryan. Please. We can't afford $2,000. Your father's only working part-time. I'm doing odd jobs. We're barely surviving. Should have thought about that before you bet everything on Luke. We're your parents. You're my tenants. I add. Big difference. And if you can't pay, you've got 30 days to figure something out. Payment was scraped together the first month. They were late second month. The late fee was filed. Third month, they failed. Luke lived with them. All four, including James, are in that residence. Mom requested an extension. I gave 10 days. So, I started evictions. My lawyer managed everything. Professional, clean, compliant. Luke's creditors inched closer. The house is no longer collateral. It was mine now. There was no collateral for the debt. Judgment stacked. Wage garnishment affected his warehouse pay. His BMW was repossessed from my parents' driveway at 6 a.m. on Tuesday. From my phone's property management app, I saw the repo vehicle leave. A camera is on the front porch. The eviction notice arrived on day 45. My mom visited my building that night. Security said. There's a woman in the lobby. Says she's your mother. She's crying. Sir. Tell her I'm not available. She promises to contact the police if she stays after an hour. I watched security on my laptop. Saw her wait in the lobby for 3 hours, blotting her eyes and gazing at her phone, thinking I'd come down. I didn't. Finally, she departed. A nighttime email. Ryan. We made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. We should never have let Luke take your dog. Should never have threatened you. Should never have put him before you all those years. But please don't take our home. Don't put us on the street. Your father's health is failing. James needs stability. We're begging you. We're begging you. Please, Ryan. Read twice. I sent it to my lawyer with one word. Proceed. Eviction completed 2 weeks later. Sheriff's department told them 72 hours to leave. I didn't watch. Not necessary. I received images from property management after empty rooms. A little wall damage. They left rubbish. The refrigerator was taken despite coming with the house. I corrected it. Fresh paint, new appliances, expert cleaning. Rental price, $2,500, month. Within a week, rented. I make almost $1,400 a month passively from $2,500 rent minus $280 property taxes, $150 insurance, and $200 management charge. When money ran out, Luke stayed in a motel and then a shelter. Mom and Dad moved into a bad side 1-bedroom apartment. Rent $800, all four sharing that space. Instagram blacked out. No more entrepreneurial grind posts. No more encouraging quotes. Stop renting sporty cars and fancy outfits. Only silence. Should have felt horrible. I didn't because I'd spent 32 years seeing them sacrifice everything for Luke's aspirations and ignore mine. Watching them threaten to sell my puppy like nothing. Like they could use everything I loved. Witnessing their punishment. It felt right. My phone buzzed 8 months later in March in Austin at a UT basketball game with Sarah. Unknown number. This is Luke. Can we talk, please? I'm begging. I showed Sarah. Raising an eyebrow. Begging now. Apparently, you going to meet him? Thought about it. I wanted to ignore it, but the part that recalled my dog's face in that car window wanted to know what rock bottom looked like on him. Yeah, replied. I want to see this. Downtown Coffee Cafe was our meeting place. Neutral public ground. He sat down looking haggard, with ill-fitting clothes, falling shoes, and shaky hands. I'm not here for money, he said. Good, because you're not getting any. I know. I know I'm not. Couldn't look at me. I needed you to see what I've become, what we've all become. I sipped coffee silently. James is living with his mom full-time now. I lost custody because I couldn't provide stable housing. I see him twice a month. Supervised visits at a facility that smells like bleach. Cracked voice. He asked me why Grandma and Grandpa live in such a small apartment. Not knowing what to say, I remained silent. Dad suffered a small heart attack last month, but they can't afford follow-up. Mom is 63 and works 2 jobs. They usually eat ramen for dinner. He turned to me, red-eyed and moist, and said, "I did this. I did all of this." "Yes," I answered. "You did the dog thing." Shaking his head. "That was the worst moment of my life. Not when they arrested me. Not when I lost everything. The worst moment was watching you on that sidewalk as we drove away with Max. The look on your face. I'll never forget it. Neither will I. I'm sorry." Broken words. I'm so sorry for everything. For 30 years of taking and never giving back. For thinking I deserved everything because Mom and Dad told me I was special. For taking your dog and threatening to sell him like some kind of monster. I was a monster. I am a monster. He was crying. Really crying. Unfakeable sobbing. Mom wanted me to tell you she's sorry, too. She writes you letters she never sends. Pages and pages about how she failed you. How she chose wrong. How she wishes she could go back and do everything differently. Just finished coffee. Put the cup down. Dad. Too. He can't say it because he's too proud, but I hear him talking to himself at night, muttering your name and sorry. Luke looked hopeful after wiping his face. Is there any chance at all we could, I don't know, start over? Not money, not the house, just maybe a phone call sometimes. Maybe you could meet James again. He still asks about Uncle Ryan. Still has that toy car you gave him when he was 4. I lingered on him. Considered everything. Invisibility for 32 years. 32 years of unsatisfactory accomplishments. Max shaking in my arms after returning. The security footage showed my mom crying in my lobby. Then I stood. No. His face fell. Ryan, please. You asked if we could start over. The answer is no. There's nothing to start over. There was never anything real to begin with. I was an ATM to you, a backup plan, a resource to exploit when the favorite son ran out of options. That's not. You took my dog, I replied, silent and icy, grabbing him off the street, threatening to sell him to a stranger, and using the only living creature I loved as a bargaining chip. And now you want me to pretend that didn't happen? To pick up the phone on holidays and make small talk? Opening his mouth. Nothing surfaced. Tell Mom I got her message. Tell Dad I don't care about his nighttime apologies. Tell James. I sat. Actually, don't tell James anything. He'll figure it out when he's older. Figure out that his dad and his grandparents burned every bridge for money and then wondered why nobody came to visit. I approached the door. Ryan. Wait. Please, I'm begging you. We're all begging you. Stopping, not turning. I know. I answered. That's the difference between us. I never begged for anything. I just built something worth having, and you spent your whole life taking from people who did the work. We're family. No, we're not. Family doesn't threaten to sell your dog. Family doesn't show up demanding money when you haven't spoken in years. Family doesn't mortgage their house for the golden child and then come crying when it all falls apart. I eventually faced him. You're strangers who share my DNA. That's all you've ever been. I just didn't realize it until you made it impossible to ignore. I abandoned him crying in a coffee shop full of people pretending to ignore him. I returned to Sarah and she looked up from her phone. How'd it go? They're still begging. You forgive them? No. Never will I let go of her. She grinned. Good. We visited my house later that night. Here we are. My phone buzzed 3 more times. Mom, Dad, Luke. Same desperate texts, different numbers. Please, we're begging. Just one more chance. I erased them without reading past the first line. Max leapt onto the couch and placed his huge head on my lap, as if remembering that week away from home. I scratched behind his ears and he made that happy sound that suggested everything was fine. Austin shone outside. My city, life, choice. Please subscribe if you like this video. It boosts the channel and helps us tell greater tales. Thanks. Mother claims she raised us after the divorce, but I was the child who cooked, cleaned, and parentified myself. At my shower, I exposed her lies. I'll keep this simple, with no fancy breaks or pretty headings, because I wanted to read postings like the ones I see here, where people lay out facts and seek judgment or advice. My parents divorced when I was 6 years old, and the way time was divided after that set the tone for all that came after. My father managed finances, school papers, pickups and drop-offs, and maintained consistent routines. I spent a lot of time with him doing things like schoolwork, sports practice, grocery shopping, laundry, and cooking, eating and cleaning meals without giving speeches. My mother stated that the divorce had broken her because my father had an affair and that she required space and time for herself and her friends. She refused to sit at home alone and stated that she deserved a life. When I stayed with her, she would leave in the evening, and I would keep an eye on my 4-year-old brother. I would go over a list of everything he required for the next day, move laundry from the machine to the dryer, lay out clothes, prepare food and check his and my backpacks. By the time I was 14, I didn't need to be ordered to do anything because no one else in the apartment was going to go through the checklist. My brother was 10 and required rides, papers, signatures, lunches, clean clothes, and someone to ensure he slept at night. Our mother would text from the bars, saying she'd be back soon, then send another text, and then nothing. I learnt not to wait for her because getting up meant starting the next day with no sleep, then taking an exam or going to practice and attempting to concentrate when my head felt like it was filled with static. So I set alarms, established routines, watched the gate, and jotted down bus numbers, phone numbers, due dates, locker combinations, and notes about when the field trip money needed to be turned in, and when the clinic in town was open for Waylands. My father did not disparage our mother, nor did he engage me in his thoughts about what she was doing. I didn't tell him much about nights at her apartment, since I knew if he tried to take action in court, the timetable might not alter, and we'd have to keep performing those exchanges while they argued. I didn't want to be in the thick of a new conflict. He paid the support, showed up, and inquired if everything was good. I answered we were because that answer kept the peace and allowed me to maintain control of the plan I had devised. If people ask me where other adults in our family were during those years, I can tell them they were present but unable to change the situation because the custody order stated what it stated. My mother told them she had it handled, and I was the one handling things, and no one wanted to pull the thread that might unravel the small stability that my plan created. I kept track of food and money by watching pricing, reading shop flyers, and purchasing what I could prepare quickly, and had enough fuel to get us through practice and homework the following day. I learned how to prepare fast foods so that they felt like a meal. And I realized that if I left a pan of rice in the fridge, I could make something presentable when I returned home from a late activity without having to start from scratch. None of this seemed heroic to me, and I don't write anything to sound like I'm searching for compliments. This is exactly what happened, and what I had to do to keep us from having constant emergencies. I missed activities and social gatherings with friends because if I left my brother alone at night, he would be alone. And I understood what it was like to sit in a quiet location and count the minutes. I wouldn't make him do more than he already did. When the topic of moving away for college arose at the conclusion of high school, I told them that I couldn't leave because my brother still required someone to do the work on a daily basis. My father asked if he could seek for more time, and I told him he could try, but I didn't want court battles that might not impact the outcome. We decided that I would take community classes, work nearby, and keep things stable until my brother was back on his feet. I did that, and when he was older, had a license, and spent most nights at our father's house, I moved into a modest apartment with a roommate and began to focus on my own life. I carried habits from those years, but I also began to breathe a little easier since I wasn't watching the door for our mother, or calculating how much money we had left for dinners and school supplies until the next support transfer. Let's fast forward to now. I'm pregnant, and my partner and I organized a baby shower for both sides of my family. I figured we could get through a brief event without revisiting the past, because the focus would be on the baby, diapers, bottles, and gear, as well as who would handle food that day. I made it plain to the buddy who hosted that we did not want speeches, toasts, or activities that required a microphone. We set a small time frame, and everyone were fine for the majority of the event. My parents were in the same room without speaking, which was good because the goal wasn't to reconcile them, but to get through the occasion without incident. Near the end, my mother joined a group and began telling a story about raising 2 children on her alone and how difficult it was after my father cheated and abandoned her. She repeated it in a clear voice, looked around at everyone, and kept going. My father was within earshot but did not say anything. I watched people listen and nod, and I knew that if I remained silent, I would be co-signing a narrative of my life that excludes many nights, a lot of work, and a great deal of support from my father. The math in my thoughts was quick and straightforward. I either interrupt and state unequivocally that the story is incorrect, or I let it sit and then correct versions of it in smaller rooms for years. I chose the first choice and said clearly that I raised myself and my brother during her time, and that my father did not forsake us, paying support and showing up. I said, if people want to know who cooked, signed forms, handled pickups, called the bus line, sat in clinics, met teachers, and made sure there was food, they can talk to me. I said I would not let my child grow up believing a story that gives credit to someone who did not do the work. My mother told me I was ungrateful and that I was embarrassing her. She left the gathering with her friends and didn't talk with me for 2 weeks. She wrote me a message the day after the shower, saying I had crossed a boundary and that she would not speak to me until I apologized. I did not respond to that message because an apology for stating the truth would put me back, and I wanted to focus my attention on the delivery and setting up support that would function during those initial weeks. I prepared a visit schedule and informed both parties that visits might be abbreviated by arrangement, that we would not host drop-ins, and that no photos of the infant would be posted without our permission. My father said he understood and asked if we needed anything else. My mother responded with nothing but quiet. About a week before my due date, my mother requested that we meet near her home. She explained that she had thought about the shower and could see how her remarks were incorrect. She claimed that she left us unsupervised on many nights and used bars and friends to deal with the divorce and affair. She stated that she was depressed, felt empty, and shut down, and that hanging out with pals at bars saved her from sitting alone. She stated that she should have sought therapy but did not due to cost and fear of being judged. She asked for the opportunity to be a present grandmother and create trust. I told her that while I accept her awareness of conduct, I will not rewrite history, and that if she wants a position, it will be established on tiny, consistent behaviors over time. I told her I would not be her therapist or health manager, and that if she felt she needed help she should seek it from specialists. I established clear guidelines for visits and stated that if she broke them, we would pause. She claimed she understood and cried, and I didn't rush to make her feel better because I'm no longer doing that job. My father dropped over with a bag of goods and asked if I wanted to discuss what had happened. I informed him about the cafe chat, and he said he felt ashamed in the shower because he knew his affair set off the chain of events that led to the divorce. He apologized for not pushing harder long ago when he thought that things were not stable at my mother's house. He expressed concern that a legal fight would fail, causing us to lose time with him and even destroying our lives. We sat down, and I told him that I don't want to revisit prior decisions every time something happens, and that I need him to focus on what we need right now. He stated he would and requested me to notify him if he begins to overfunction, or push too hard out of guilt. I appreciated it since it pointed to a pattern I don't want to repeat in which emotions drive behaviors that result in additional work for me. The baby shower prompted inquiries from family members who had heard 2 distinct accounts of the past over the years. I informed them that I'm not attempting to punish my mother, absolve my father, or rank them. I'm interested in creating a baseline for my child based on actual behavior that will keep our family free of disruption and blame stories. I informed them that I am open to individuals who show up but close to those who do not. And I added that if somebody attempts to force me into a reconciliation arc to make themselves feel better, they should stop because I am not doing that work for others. So I provided an update. People messaged me to ask what occurred shortly after the shower, if my brother reached out, and if there was any fallout. My brother called me 2 days after the incident and said he froze when our mother was speaking and wished he had stepped in with a brief message of support to end the conversation right there. He said he emailed her that night that he agreed with me, that he remembered many evenings when I was in charge, and that he would not sit through future speeches that allocate credit in a way that ignores the work I accomplished. He requested me to provide him a list of the postpartum boundaries I established so that he could reinforce them if anyone tried to push over them while I was fatigued or unavailable. I provided him the timetable, as well as the guidelines regarding brief visits, consent for photos, and no posts. And he said he would support me in any room. In terms of consequences, cousins asked my mother if she wanted to explain her side, and she said she was tired of dealing with ungrateful children. One cousin sent me a long note about how my mother's divorce had left her with fewer finances and that going to bars for social support was typical. I stated that while social support is not a problem, leaving children alone night after night is, and that I will not address that anymore. My father did not contact my mother or ask me to communicate with her on his behalf. He limited his comments to practical advice and let the social aspect fall where it would. I believe this helped to avoid me from being forced into the go-between role, which I do not want to continue in this next stage of my life. In the week following the shower, I finalized our plans for the birth and the first 2 weeks at home. My husband and I devised a simple system that included meal drop-offs on specific days and quiet days with no visits, as well as a list of duties that people might perform if they asked how to help. We put it all down since word of mouth spreads quickly, and when people are in the room, they frequently default to holding the baby and chatting when what we really need is dishes, laundry, garbage, and someone to pick up a card or a prescription. We communicated the plan to both parties and adhered to it. People who followed the plan were invited back, while those who did not received fewer windows. It was not a punishment, it was a means to keep a tiny unit safe throughout a difficult stage. After the meeting, my mother sent texts stating that she would respect the rules I established, including not bringing friends, making speeches, or sharing images. I asked her to affirm that she would arrive and depart on time, and that she would inquire before taking up the infant. She said yes. I avoided lengthy discussions since they frequently devolve into old grudges that consume hours and yield nothing useful. I wanted to preserve every interaction with her related to specific activities that I could consider later. Then the birth occurred. Labor proceeded as predicted, with the typical range of discomfort, decisions, monitoring, and checks. We kept the hospital room quiet and did not accept drop-in visitors. My father arrived during visiting hours, sat and held the baby, asked if I needed anything specific, and then went to my house to get some things in order. My mother arrived the next day during her assigned window, bringing a little bag of diapers and wipes, as well as a brief message in which she expressed her desire to do better in the future. She asked to hold the baby, and I said yes. She sat and held the baby, not talking about the past, the shower, or my father, and did not take out her phone without asking. After 20 minutes, she returned the baby and said she'd leave so I could rest. This was the first time in many years that I didn't feel like I was attempting to control her attitude or guide the room around her needs. We went home and began our schedule. People arrived and left at predetermined times and completed particular chores. We kept a log on the fridge where we recorded feeding times, diaper counts, medications, and tasks. This was useful because when someone asked how we could help, we could refer to the list rather than thinking up tasks on the fly while carrying a wailing baby. My mother arrived to our house during her allotted hours and inquired what she could do. I told her to fold the laundry, wash the bottles and wipe the surfaces, which she did. She did not modify our routines, give unsolicited advice, or attempt to take over the infant. She set a timer on her phone and departed as soon as it went off. I documented each good visit because I want to evaluate based on data, not hope. Update 2. Another update because folks asked if I would go to therapy with my mother, push her into treatment, or help manage her health. I informed my mother that if she wanted to pursue treatment, I would provide her the names of therapists and a link to an intake portal. That was the extent of my engagement. I provided her a short list that matched her insurance and asked her to let me know if she had scheduled anything. And she could keep it private if she wanted to. She texted around 2 weeks later that she had completed an intake and attended her first session, and that it was difficult to sit with comments on her patterns. She stated that the therapist asked her to describe how she coped after the divorce and how it affected us, and she could see that she told herself a story in which she regarded herself as the key source of our survival, even if the facts did not support that. I told her I heard her and will watch what she did next. I also established a guideline regarding childcare. For the time being, only my father, brother, and 2 close friends can handle the infant on their own. My mother is welcome to pay me visits and assist with tasks when I am present. If she maintains consistency for several months, we can return. She acknowledged her understanding and asked if she might take the stroller for a short walk with me present. I agreed to a loop around the block while we were together, which we did, and it was fine. She didn't press for more, which I appreciated because it would have set us back. Money came up since my mother volunteered to help. I suggested she put up a little monthly transfer into the account we made for the baby's future. I asked her not to acquire goods without coordination because space and procedures are more important than random items. She agreed and scheduled a transfer, bringing consumables rather than huge stuff. During visits, she sometimes reads from a book while I rest, which is more useful than elaborate gestures. I prefer assistance that fits within our plan. Regarding my father, I informed him openly that I did not want him to grade my mother on a curve because of his guilt over the affair. I instructed him not to overemphasize fundamental obedience or to talk about her improvement in a way that puts pressure on me to respond with thanks. He stated that he understands and keeps his comments focused on tasks. He also stays away from any communication with her so that I am not triangulated. He focuses on running errands, taking rides, and making minor repairs around our house that are important on a daily basis. When he does something, he records it on the board and then moves on. This keeps our relationships tidy and effective. Questions arose regarding whether I should maintain relationships with extended family members who hold strong beliefs about what transpired. And some of them advised me to forgive quickly because life is short. I informed them that I am not conducting a forgiveness contest and will not be ticking down the days until a deadline. I am managing a household with a newborn and attempting to establish a sane rhythm. Anyone who assists is welcome during this season, but anyone who causes friction is not. I am explicit in text and in person, and I do not fight after I have laid out the rules. People adjust or cease coming. I'm fine with both results. Update 3 is the third update, because a test of the new regulations arose during a naming ceremony at my partner's family home, where both of my parents were invited for a brief while. My partner's family wanted a small gathering where a few relatives may sit for a while and provide words of encouragement before sharing a meal and heading home. We communicated the same regulations and timeframes for visits and stated up front that there would be no speeches from my parents or toasts to the past. My mother asked if she might offer a blessing for a minute, and I told her that we don't do open mics and that she should save any words for her own time. On the day of the occasion, she arrived on time and sat in the back, helping plate food rather than attempting to join groups with my in-laws to retell history. My father arrived on time and sat beside my brother, staying in his lane as well. Halfway through the celebration, one of my partner's family members complimented both of my parents for raising me. I felt a slight push from the audience toward a familiar arc in which people stare at the elderly and wait for a response. My mother began to speak and I looked at her and shook my head once, saying, "We are keeping this focused on the baby." She paused and sat back down. My father remained quiet. The event has moved on. This may seem insignificant, but for us it was a moment when an old pattern could have seized the wheel but did not. Another test came a week later, when my mother arrived 15 minutes late for a scheduled appointment and then requested to stay until the end time to make up her minutes. I said no, because the end time is important for naps, feedings, and sanity. She said that traffic was the reason and requested me to be accommodating. I mentioned that life has traffic, and the rule is based on start and end periods. If she wants extra time, she can demonstrate that she can meet start times over numerous visits, and we can then consider minor adjustments. She departed on time and didn't push. That was also a data point I noted, because follow-through is more important than promising to do better next time. People have inquired if I intend to rebuild a closer relationship with my mother beyond these scheduled meetings. I'm not making any guarantees regarding that because I no longer base my relationships on hope. I run them based on their conduct over time. I will add that I have witnessed tiny steps. She has kept her hands busy with household activities without seeking praise. She has not expressed a desire to upload images. She hasn't repeated the shower story. She's started therapy. She's avoided disputes with my father. These are the steps. I can notice them while maintaining my limits. My brother has taken on the position of uncle in a way that indicates he is ready to put his parentified role behind. He comes by on weekends and runs the errands I assign. He cooks a pot of food, organizes containers, and labels them, saving us time for days. He holds the infant and follows instructions, and he instructs me to sleep while he does the dishes and cleans the space. I told him that seeing him in this role without the previous weight on his shoulders is something I'll never forget. He stated he feels the same way and is delighted we can have a family moment without carrying someone else's obligations. Readers have asked if I will ever accept my mother's apology as adequate. My response is that apologies don't mean anything to me until they are followed up on over time. I'm not tallying points, but I am tracking behavior because I've discovered that without tracking, I end myself in a cloud of emotions. And this brings me back to performing labor for others. I'm not doing that anymore. And I will not raise my child in that fog. I'll maintain our home on a predictable path, and everybody who wants in will fit in. Now, because this is Reddit and people ask for judgment, I'll pose a question. I don't require a label of right or wrong, but I could appreciate feedback on a number of upcoming decisions. One is whether to allow my mother a brief solo outing with the stroller in the coming weeks if she continues to arrive on time and follow instructions. I'm leaning toward waiting longer since once she leaves the apartment with the baby, I have no control over what she says to anyone she meets or whether she attempts to take a photo and pass it around. I can specify restrictions, but outside the apartment they are more difficult to enforce. I'd rather add extra in-apartment hours before we grow. Another dilemma is if I should invite both of my parents to the same future kid occasions, such as birthdays or school activities, or alternate. My tendency is to alternate for a while, because shared activities invite speeches, narratives, and sideways comments, which I prefer to avoid during the early years. Update 4. 2 months passed, and my mother maintained her therapy schedule based on what she decided to communicate, and she arrived at the majority of her appointments on time. She missed 2 and gave notice on 1, but not the other. I did not reschedule the missed appointment without notice and pushed the following window by a week as a logical consequence. Because my time is not an open slot that others can fill or drop as they choose. She accepted it without protest, and on subsequent visits, she arrived early and waited in her car until the start time, which I saw as evidence that she understood the rules. Inside the flat, she continued to assign duties and avoided baby management until I specifically requested it. She tried to adjust the swaddling once, and I told her to stop so she did not try again. One event threw a knot in the plan, and it was the first time I had to make a hard stop. At a family dinner outside of our home, my mother began telling the person sitting next to her that she did what she needed to do to survive after the divorce, and that people do not realize the cost of betrayal. I heard something from across the room and stood up, walked over, and told them that this topic was off bounds and that if it continued, we would leave. She claimed she was simply making conversation. I stated that this discourse breaches the rule that history should not be told in public areas. I took my partner and the baby and we departed after saying our goodbyes to the host. I emailed my mother later that visits had been suspended for 2 weeks and that one more incident like that would put her back at 0. The next day, she apologized and promised not to do it again. When the pause ended, she proceeded to the next window and followed the guidelines. My father adhered to the plan without incident. He has not used my mother's actions to make a judgment about who is better or worse. He has not requested greater access than we can provide within this time frame. He has not attempted to make atonement in years past with extravagant gestures that result in more effort. He keeps it steady, which is exactly what I need from him. He once began to express regret over the affair during a visit when I was feeding the baby. I told him I didn't have the time to tackle that matter and that we could talk about it later if he needed to. He replied, "No problem," and began washing bottles. That was the end of it. I've had to remind a few relatives to stop asking me to appear in the same photo as both of my parents. I don't do that. I take separate images and do not post them, nor do I allow others to. When people request a good family photo for memories, I tell them that my priority is my child's schedule, not their photo album. I don't apologize. I state it honestly and move on. The fewer words I use, the better, because arguments expand in empty space. When my parents threatened to sue me unless I gave my house to my sister, my lawyer laughed, and I realized I was finally free. Growing up, the pattern was clear. Serafina had the newest fashions, special tutors, and fantasy trips. I received lectures about hard work and independence. At 16, I was flipping burgers at a shabby country eatery while she prepared for a summer trip to Europe. When I brought it up, my parents advised me to recognize priorities. Translation: Serafina's future was more important than mine. I wasn't bitter at first. I just figured that's how things worked. Parents invest in the child they believe will succeed, while the other learns to fend for himself. So, I did. I worked through college, lived in tight apartments with roommates who forgot to pay rent, and avoided going out while my peers partied. Every paycheck, I set something aside. I wasn't sure why I needed a safety net. All I knew was that no one would catch me if I fell. After graduation, I realized I had 2 options: work in a low-paying job or take a chance. So I used my savings to create a tiny auto repair shop. It wasn't glamorous, and the first year was grueling: late nights, long hours, weekends spent elbow-deep in engine grease. But it paid off. By year 5, I was making enough money to seriously consider getting my own house. Of course, my parents were aware of this. I had voiced my desire to ultimately own a home rather than rent a shoebox flat, and each time I did, they would grin and the discussion would move. My mother would sigh deeply. "Serafina's been struggling so much. Rent is so expensive these days." My father would add, "She just needs a little help." It would mean so much if she had a stable place to live. They never said it outright, but the message was clear. I was supposed to be the one to fix her problems. Never mind that Serafina's difficulties were entirely her own. While I was working 16-hour shifts, she was living her best life: vacations, designer handbags, and nights out at upscale restaurants. But strangely, she was the one who needed assistance. Then there was the money. Over the years, I'd been assisting my parents financially, covering home repairs, unforeseen bills, and even sneaking them additional cash when things became tough. I didn't mind at first. After all, they were my parents. But then I started noticing minor things, like how my mother constantly had a new purse and my father suddenly got a nice new watch. At first I assumed they had merely been saving. Then I recognized where the money was going. Serafina. My parents weren't struggling. They were simply funneling my assistance directly into her lifestyle. Then I overheard an exchange that altered everything. I'd stopped by my folks' place to drop something off. I hadn't planned to stay long, but as I passed past the kitchen, I heard my name. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I stopped in place and listened while pretending to check my phone. "I'm sure he'll do the right thing," my mother said. "He's responsible. He's been saving for years." My father agreed. "It only makes sense. He can't expect her to struggle. He's her brother." Struggle? Serafina? The same Serafina who had never paid rent in her life and still relied on my parents to pay her credit card bills? Something was not adding up. And then it struck me. They were discussing my money. I stood there, my heart hammering as the revelation hit. They had a plan. I would buy a house without being asked. Not for myself. For Serafina. And the worst part? They expected I would simply go along with it. Like it was apparent. As if it were my responsibility. I wanted to storm in and demand answers, but I knew what would happen. They'd claim I was being selfish. They'd talk about family, duty, and how fortunate I was to have succeeded while Serafina struggled. I have heard it all before. I needed to think, so I left without saying anything. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of my little studio apartment, which had a flickering kitchen light that I hadn't fixed. I reflected on every time I had been told to wait my turn, every sacrifice I had made, and every time I had swallowed my rage and smiled. And I thought about Serafina, and how she would respond if she knew what they were planned. Would she feel embarrassed? Grateful? Or would she simply presume it was her right? I received an answer the next morning. Serafina contacted me out of nowhere, her voice full of enthusiasm. She went on and on about the new spot she had discovered. "It's perfect," she exclaimed. 3 bedrooms, a backyard. I can finally move out. I waited for her to say the most important part. That she had a plan to pay for it. But she didn't, since she didn't require one. In her mind, this was already decided. My parents had plainly ensured that. She even had the guts to say she'd let me crash in the guest room if I ever needed a place to stay. That was it. I realized I wasn't playing along anymore. The very following day, I did precisely what they expected. I bought a house. But not the one they had in mind. I did not tell anyone. There is no spectacular announcement, no explanations. I selected a place I adored, paid my deposit, and signed the papers. It wasn't big, but it was mine. The first thing in my life that I genuinely owned. I assumed I had time before my family found out. Perhaps a few months, or perhaps a year. But life has a strange way of hurrying things up. I was in the middle of putting together my new kitchen, peeling off the ludicrous "Live Laugh Love" stickers left by the previous owner, when my phone started exploding up. Missed calls and messages from my mother, father, Serafina, and even extended relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Then I saw the text that made my stomach drop. "Why did we hear from the realtor that you bought a house?" I didn't know how they found out. Perhaps the agent said anything to someone. Perhaps Serafina had been looking at the same listings. It did not matter. What mattered was that I had made a move, and the real struggle was about to begin. The moment the text appeared on my screen, I realized my calm housewarming period was officially ended. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, calls and messages, some angry, others concerned, all with the same undertone. Betrayal. I disregarded them. If I picked up now, I'd be dragged into a conversation where they distorted everything to make me the bad guy. Instead, I went back to building up my home. The previous owner had left behind some ugly wallpaper in the living room, and that was going to be the most distressing thing I had to deal with today. Then the doorbell rang. I already knew who it was. I felt it in my bones. When I opened the door, my parents appeared less like loving parents and more like corporate officials, eager to talk about my breach of contract. My mother's face was a mix of disappointment and anguish, the kind of expression reserved for when I forgot to call home. My father had his arms crossed, as if he were preparing to negotiate a hostile takeover. Before they could even enter, I braced myself. The following 20 minutes were just as I expected: accusations, guilt-tripping, and the entire "we're family" speech. My mother went on about how Serafina was upset and didn't know where she would live now. My father made it obvious that they expected me to do the right thing. And my particular favorite, the reminder that after everything they had done for me, this was how I would repay them. They did everything for me. For example, as a teenager, I was forced to pay rent. Like asking me to pay for my own school, while they pay for Serafina's luxury outfit, allowing me to work 2 jobs while she enjoyed weekend spa trips. If anything, I'd repaid them tenfold. I could feel my patience wearing thin, but instead of snapping, I remained silent, nodded along, and let them talk. I'd learned a long time ago that arguing was ineffective. They were not here to listen. They were here to further their story. Then came the ultimatum. My mother, her voice full of artificial calm, informed me I had two options: give the house to Serafina or be disconnected. I had to control myself from laughing. Cut off from what? Whose love and support? The same affection and support that was always contingent upon certain circumstances. The same family that had never given me anything without asking twice as much in exchange. I assured them that I would think about it. Not because I would, but because I wanted them out of my home. They left looking victorious, as if they had surrounded me and forced me to submit. I took a big breath, entered my kitchen, and retrieved a beer from the refrigerator. Sat down and stared at my phone. More missed calls. Serafina had finally texted, and I could anticipate what it said. Something about me ruining her life, and how she had relied on me. I opened it, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Serafina sent a message, but it was not intended for me. She had unintentionally forwarded it to our family group chat rather than the person she was talking to. The communication had a detailed strategy for how she and my parents were going to break me. How they'd keep up the pressure until I gave in and handed over the house. There it was. As clear as day. Confirmation that none of this concerned fairness or family. It was a planned takedown, and I was just the fool who was meant to roll over. I snapped a screenshot, saved it, and then sat there for a minute. For the first time in years, I felt something different. There is no anger or sadness. Only clarity. They had never considered me family. I was only a resource to be called upon as needed. So, I made a decision. I was not going to argue. I was not going to explain myself. I was only going to show them how finished I was. The following morning, I began making my move. The following morning, I awoke with a plan. If my family wanted a conflict, they'd get it. But only on my terms. I was not going to fight or explain myself. I was going to take charge of the situation and make it clear that I was done playing their games. First, I secured everything. I called my bank and confirmed that only I could make adjustments to my accounts. I changed my passwords, safeguarded my key documents, and even installed security cameras around my home just in case. Knowing my family, I wouldn't put it past them to do something desperate. Then I contacted a lawyer. I had no idea if my parents could get me in trouble legally, but I wasn't going to take any chances. After describing my position, the lawyer informed me that as long as everything was in my name and I hadn't signed anything for Serafina, I wouldn't have to worry. That was encouraging news, but I was still not taking any chances. Later that day, I received an SMS from Serafina. She was willing to discuss, but only if I agreed to make things right. I ignored it. A few hours later, another text arrived, this time from my mom. She was worried about me and suggested we have a family meal to address everything. Yes, right. I was not going to fall for that trap. Instead, I chose to reverse the script. If my family felt they could influence me with pressure, I was going to apply some of my own. First, I went to social media. I published a simple post, nothing big, nothing explicitly addressing them. I just posted a picture of my new house with the message, "Finally home. Worked hard for this, and it's all mine." The reaction was quick. Friends and extended family began thanking me, commenting on how well I earned it. And then the real fun started. Serafina did not respond, but I knew she saw it. A few hours later, I received another SMS. This time, she wasn't as courteous. She yelled at me about how selfish I was and how I had embarrassed her by making my purchase public. Apparently, several of her acquaintances had queried why she wasn't buying a house if I could afford one. Her ego had taken a knock, and she was unhappy about it. Then came the phone call. This time it was my father. No more faking care. No more, "we're family" rhetoric. He was enraged, accusing me of embarrassing them and being ungrateful. I let him rant. When he eventually asked what I was going to do to rectify it, I responded simply, "Nothing." That's when the threats began. If I didn't do the proper thing, I might never be welcome in their home again. What's my response? Sounds like a win-win to me. For the first time in my life, I did not feel bad about standing my position. I didn't feel like I owed them anything, since the truth was that I didn't. I banned Serafina's number. I muted my parents' calls. Then I got takeaway from my favorite barbecue establishment, opened a cool drink, and sat on my new porch, watching the sun set over my hard-earned property. For the first time in my life, I felt completely free. The silence did not last long. By the next morning, my email was overflowing with new messages. Serafina had gone into full meltdown. My parents had begun damage control. Apparently, some extended family members saw my post and began asking inquiries. My parents didn't want anyone outside of their small circle to realize how bad things were. I could almost hear their conversations, my mother desperately attempting to spin the narrative so she wouldn't appear terrible, and my father moaning about family responsibility and how I had somehow betrayed them. And Serafina? Well, she'd gone nuclear. Not only was she yelling on the family group chat, but she was also venting her frustrations on social media. I scanned through her most recent posts, long theatrical captions about how difficult her life was, how she had been deceived by those closest to her, and how she was fighting to find a place to live. I nearly choked on my coffee when I noticed she had created a GoFundMe campaign. That's correct, she had launched a crowdfunding effort called, Help Serafina Get the Home She Deserves. The audacity was nearly astounding. The description was even better. She portrayed herself as the struggling sister whose cold-hearted brother had refused to assist her during her hour of need. She conveniently left out the part where she was expecting a free house and had done nothing to deserve it. What about the donations? A grand sum of $20, likely from one of her equally entitled buddies. I had to admit that I was rather disappointed. If you're going to commit to the hoax, make it convincing. Still, the situation was becoming ludicrous. I needed to stop this before it went any farther. I didn't want to turn this into an internet family war, but I also didn't want to let them tarnish my reputation. So I decided to drop one final bomb. I created a second article, but this time I added some receipts, actual screenshots of Serafina's text message to me, in which she openly acknowledged to scheming with my parents to coerce me into giving her my house. I didn't provide any commentary, just screenshots and the caption, clearing up some misunderstandings. The internet handled the rest. Within hours, others began calling her out. Friends who had previously blindly supported her have now gone silent. Some even turned against her, understanding they'd been duped. Serafina erased her GoFundMe page and locked her social media accounts. My parents, too, were struggling to cope with the heat. Apparently, some extended family members decided to reach out and question why they thought it was acceptable to demand a house from their son while coddling their daughter. By the end of the day, the family group chat was completely silent. No more guilt-tripping messages or passive-aggressive calls. Just silence. And it was amazing. I sat back and watched the sun fall below the horizon, my phone empty of notifications. I had a refreshing drink in my hand, a playlist of my favorite music playing in the background, and for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the next shoe to drop. I wasn't concerned with what my family thought or if I had done the proper thing. I'd done the right thing for myself, and that was enough. The hush lasted for a full week. There are no calls, texts, or anything. I anticipated my parents to make one more desperate attempt, but for the first time, they appeared to realize I wasn't moving. Perhaps the public disgrace had finally set in. Perhaps they were regrouping. In any case, I was not about to get comfy. Then, just as I was settled into my new life, another surprise arrived. Certified mail. A large envelope bearing my parents' return address, the kind that never contains good news. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee in one hand and a letter opener in the other, prepared for whatever drivel was inside. This was a legal notice. My parents threatened to sue me. I had to read it twice to ensure that I wasn't having hallucinations. According to the petition, they claimed I misled them into believing I was purchasing the home for the family's benefit and that I had unjustly profited myself at their expense. That was absurd. I had never made a promise to anyone about handing away my house, but their desperation had reached unprecedented heights. What is the best part? They demanded financial restitution for the mental suffering I had caused Serafina. That's right. She was so upset about not getting a free house that they assumed she deserved money. I followed what any sensible individual would do. I laughed. Then I called my lawyer. The conversation was short. My lawyer could barely contain his delight as he told me that this lawsuit had no chance of succeeding in court. At best it was a fear technique. At worst it was a last-ditch attempt to coerce me into giving in. Regardless, I wasn't concerned. But I wasn't going to let it slip. If they tried to escalate things, I would immediately escalate them back. I made a few more calls, one to my bank to double-check everything was locked down, and another to a locksmith to strengthen my home security. Then I did something I knew would send them over the edge. I responded with a certified letter notifying my parents that any additional harassment would result in legal action. 2 days later, phone calls resumed, first my mother, then my father, and finally Serafina. I disregarded them all. Some left contrite voicemails, while others continued to guilt-trip me. My mother's was the greatest. She went from tearful to enraged in a single message, demanding to know how I could abandon my own family for something as insignificant as a house. Small. The irony almost knocked me over. Why would they go to court over something so small? Finally, on the third day, I answered when my father called. He cut through the chit-chat and got right to the point. They would drop everything if I simply decided to work something out with Serafina. I informed him that there was nothing to work out. That was the final straw. He exploded, ranting about how selfish I was, how I had deceived them, and how no son of his would ever treat his family in this manner. It was the same type of speech I had heard 100 times before. However, this time I felt nothing. I let him speak. When he finally ran out of steam, I simply told him I had nothing else to say. I wished him well, expressed my hope that they would move on, and hung up. And that was all. The legal threats were dismissed. The guilt trip is gone. My parents finally seemed to realize that I was not giving up. Serafina went radio silent. Either she recognized she was not receiving anything from me, or she found another subject to cling on to. For the first time in my life, I felt liberated. No more manipulation. No more obligations. Just me, my house, and a future that truly belonged to me. I'd won. The first several weeks of freedom were challenging. I'd spent so much time waiting for the next round of manipulation that it seemed strange to wake up without fear of receiving a passive-aggressive text or another family ambush. My house felt more like a home than a location I had to defend. For the first time, I was able to focus on myself. I established a consistent routine, getting up early, going to the gym, and making genuine meals rather than grabbing fast food on the run. I finally had the time and energy to enjoy the simple pleasures in life, like sitting on my veranda with a cup of coffee and watching the world rise up. It was the kind of peace I never knew I needed. But of course, peace does not stay long. One afternoon, while working from home, I heard a knock on the door. Before I saw, my intuition knew who it was. Sure enough, Serafina. She stood on my porch, looking less like the sister I grew up with and more like a door-to-door salesperson on the final day of the quarter. The entitled assurance was vanished, leaving behind an appearance of desperation. Almost. I did not let her in. Instead, I stood outside, arms crossed, waiting for whatever script she had written. She began with small talk, awkward and strained, as if she were reciting from a poorly rehearsed screenplay. Then came the true reason she was here. She reflected on everything and realized. She had been a little unjust. She informed me that she was no longer looking for a house, but rather a somewhere to stay for a short time. I almost laughed. A little while, correct? And then what? I let her move in, and now I'm paying her expenses while she sits on my couch, whining about how unfair life is. Not a chance. I kept my reaction simple. Her parents had gone above and beyond for her. Why not stick with them? That was when the full truth came out. She was no longer welcome there. Our parents' reputation seemed to have suffered as a result of what happened. Relatives who had previously tolerated their behavior were less likely to support them. Even Serafina's pals had distanced themselves. It turns out that when you go viral for attempting to defraud your own brother, people don't want to interact with you. Serafina was seeking for more than just a place to crash. She wanted to get away from the catastrophe she had created. I did not take the bait. I informed her I was no longer interested in performing that role. No hard feelings, but I was not responsible for resolving the issues she caused. Her demeanor shifted as soon as I said those words. The phony humility vanished, replaced by the same old anger. She labeled me selfish and claimed that families should support each other. I simply shrugged. She walked out in a huff, making a dramatic exit that would have worked when we were kids. But all I felt was relief. A few days later, I went to the mall to pick up some items. While standing in line at a coffee establishment, I heard a familiar voice. Serafina was speaking loudly to someone at a nearby table. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but when your sister's voice sounds like a megaphone, it's difficult not to. She was whining loudly about how difficult life was today and how she needed to get this work. An actual job. Like a normal person. She complained about how stressful it was and how she couldn't believe people did this every day. Meanwhile, the woman she was speaking with appeared to be on the verge of telling Serafina that the majority of the population has always done the same thing. I bit my lip to avoid laughing. It was too wonderful. Instead of saying anything, I grabbed my coffee and passed by her table. She did not even notice me. However, as I stepped outdoors, I couldn't help but smile. For the first time in my life, I wasn't dealing with Serafina's issues. Someone else heard her tirade about life's inequities. And you know what? That was all right with me. Later that evening, I received a text from my mother, a last-ditch attempt to guilt me into rethinking. Something about how family sticks together, and she couldn't believe how cold I'd gotten. I ignored it. They had spent years emphasizing that I wasn't truly a member of their family until I served a purpose for them. Now I finally understand something crucial. I was not cold, I was just finished. And for the first time in my life I felt no need to explain myself to anyone. My sister stole my identity for an $800,000 fraud. At dinner, I faced her and said, "This is a police report." Her smile vanished instantly. The bank informed me that I owed $623,000 for a mortgage I never signed. It turns out that my sister exploited my name to acquire her dream home. At family dinner, I didn't say anything but handed the police report across the table. Her fork dropped. Every jaw at the table dropped. My world was wrecked with a single phone call. A terrible betrayal that ripped through the very core of my family. I never dreamed that the person I'd looked up to my whole life would be the one to orchestrate such a brutal lie, leaving me to pick up the pieces of a life she'd systematically destroyed. Before everything fell apart, I, Lila Morgan, a 29-year-old nurse from Seattle, had a pretty wonderful existence. Nothing spectacular, but it was satisfying. For 6 years, I worked as a registered nurse in Seattle Grace Hospital's pediatric unit. Even on the most difficult days, aiding sick children feels extremely rewarding. My co-workers were like family, and I had established a reputation as dependable and caring. My little cozy apartment in Ballard was my haven, complete with plants. With so many plants, my friends joked that it was more like a greenhouse than a home. Those green buddies brought me comfort during busy hospital shifts. Then there was my own family. Victor and Eleanor, my parents, raised my sister, Serafina, and myself in the same suburban home. They were excellent people, honest, diligent, and dedicated. Serafina, 3 years my senior, was always the confident one, the achiever, and the one who made friends easily. I was the quiet, studious one who discovered my voice only after college. But there was never any resentment. At least not that I noticed. I was proud of her accomplishments. As adults, we stayed close. Serafina had a successful career in real estate, selling luxury residences. She married Damian Vale, a financial advisor, 5 years ago. They were an attractive pair, always tanned from their regular tropical holidays. Their social media feed was a showcase of controlled perfection. Meanwhile, I stayed single and focused on my profession. Our lives couldn't be more different, but we still got together for coffee and family dinners twice a month. Serafina would occasionally make subtle remarks about my lifestyle or advise investments that I couldn't afford, but I just chalked it up to her wanting the best for me. Serafina and Damian moved into their gorgeous Craftsman home in Queen Anne, one of Seattle's most exclusive districts, 8 months ago. At their housewarming, I felt a tinge of envy as I walked through their perfectly refurbished rooms, complete with Viking equipment and panoramic views. "Someday you'll have this too, sis," she'd added, grabbing my shoulder. "You just need to aim higher." The day everything changed began like any other Tuesday. My phone vibrated as I was assisting Noah, a 7-year-old kid, change his bandages. I usually don't respond during patient treatment, but I was waiting for word regarding my elderly neighbor. "Hello, this is Lila," I said as I stepped into the corridor. "Miss Morgan, this is Marcus Hale from Washington Mutual Bank, and I'm phoning regarding your missed mortgage payments. We've sent multiple letters, and I'm afraid if we don't get this resolved soon, we'll have to start foreclosure procedures." My stomach fell. "I'm sorry. There must have been a mistake. I don't have a mortgage, I rent my apartment." His voice became slightly arrogant. "Miss Morgan, our records show that you took out a $623,000 mortgage in January for a residence on Highland Drive. You paid for the first 3 months, but we have not received anything since April." Highland Drive. This sounded familiar. Wasn't it Serafina's street? "This is a mistake," I repeated, my voice rising. "I've never purchased property. My credit isn't even good enough for a mortgage that size. I'm a nurse, not a surgeon. The application shows an annual income of $192,000 and a credit score of 782 at the time of application. We have all the documentation, Miss Morgan, including your signature on multiple forms. Perhaps you could come into the branch to review the paperwork." The conversation went on as if nothing had happened. I returned to Noah's room on autopilot, my mind racing. Was there a clerical error? Identity theft? What about the address? That cannot be a coincidence. At the bank, Oliver Kent, the branch manager, laid out a folder of documents that made my stomach sink with each page. Loan application, income verification, credit check authorization, and closing papers, all with what seemed to be my signature. And there it was. Black and white. The property address corresponded to Serafina's new home. Could I get copies of all of this? I inquired, my voice remote. Miss Morgan, if you did not apply for this mortgage, I strongly advise you to contact the police. This appears to be identity theft and possibly fraud. I nodded numbly, but a voice within was screaming, not just any identity theft. My sister, my own sister, had stolen my identity to purchase her dream home. The days that followed were a flurry of fear, bewilderment and thorough research. I called in ill to work for the first time in 2 years, unable to concentrate as my personal life unraveled. My flat, which had once been my haven, suddenly felt like a cage in which I wandered ceaselessly, alternating between wrath and confusion. Could there be another explanation? Perhaps Serafina had made a catastrophic administrative mistake. But as I examined the copied documents, my hopeful notion disintegrated. This was deliberate. Someone had painstakingly falsified my signature on several documents. Someone had provided my social security number, birth date, and work history. Someone who knows me well. My first call was to Equifax. The customer service guy seemed bored until I described the matter. Her tone then altered to one of trained pity. Let me pull up your credit report, Miss Morgan. A keyboard click, followed by a pause. There are several accounts here that appear to have been opened in the past year. The mortgage is the largest, but there's also a home equity line of credit for $150,000, 3 credit cards with limits between $20,000 and $30,000 each, and a personal loan for $45,000. I went to the doctor. All of these are fraudulent. I didn't open any of them. By the end of the day, I'd contacted all 3 major credit agencies, filed fraud alerts, and discovered that my credit score, which had formerly been a respectable 724, had plunged to 546 as a result of missing mortgage payments and maxed out credit cards I was unaware of. The following morning, I met with Fiona Adler, a financial advisor. This is definitely identity theft, she acknowledged. And I must say, it's quite sophisticated. Whoever did this knew exactly what information would be required to pass verification checks. It was my sister, I added, making the accusation aloud for the first time. The house is hers. She's living in it right now. Fiona's expression changed from professional worry to real shock. That complicates things. Family fraud is unfortunately common, but it presents unique challenges both legally and emotionally. What should I do? Legally, it's clear you need to file a police report. Without this, banks will not regard you as a victim, rather than a participant. I hesitated. Despite the growing evidence, I still couldn't believe Serafina, my defender and role model, would do this to me. Before reporting to the police, I decided to acquire additional information. A handwriting expert verified the falsified signatures. Then I began looking into Serafina's finances. Through social media and informal discussions, I saw alarming tendencies. Despite their seeming prosperity, Serafina and Damien had been experiencing financial troubles for at least 2 years. Nonetheless, their lifestyle had not changed. If anything, they'd get more ostentatious. My buddy Marissa, who works at a premium vehicle shop, provided the most incriminating evidence. I probably shouldn't tell you this, Marissa explained over coffee. But when they ran her credit for financing, it was a mess. Damien ended up paying cash, but I overheard them arguing about it in the parking lot. He said something like, "We can't keep doing this." The house was risky enough. The property was damaged. My residence. I also noticed that many credit accounts had been started in my name, all of which were linked to online statements using a small variation of my email address. LilaMorgan883@gmail.com rather than my actual LilaWillMorgan193@gmail.com. It's easy to miss during verification processes, but it's definitely planned. Every new piece of information seemed like an extra weight on my chest, making it difficult to breathe and reject the truth. My sister, whom I had entirely trusted, had stolen my identity to fund a lifestyle she couldn't afford. She had put me under the bus without hesitation, leaving me to cope with the financial and legal consequences when everything eventually failed. After a week of investigation, I couldn't avoid taking the essential action. With a heavy heart, I drove to the Seattle Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. I sat in a hard plastic chair for over an hour before Detective Nadia Cruz noticed me. "Lila Morgan," she inquired, a woman in her 40s with short brown hair and sad eyes. "My name is Detective Nadia Cruz, and I apologize for the wait. Please follow me." She brought me to a small interview room. "Now I understand you're here to report identity theft." "Yes," I replied, my voice smaller than I had intended. "By my sister." Detective Cruz's expression flickered with surprise, perhaps sympathy, before returning to her professional approach. I see. That's regrettably more common than you might think. Tell me everything from the beginning. I spent the next 2 hours walking her through the entire story. The bank call, the mortgage I never sought for, the credit cards and loans made in my name, and the home my sister lived in were all obtained using my stolen identity. Miss Morgan, I want to be clear about something. Filing this report means we will investigate fully. And if the evidence supports your claims, your sister could face serious criminal charges. Identity theft and mortgage fraud are felonies. She could go to prison. Are you prepared for that? The query struck me hard. Was I ready to accept responsibility for sending Serafina to prison? To destroy her life, marriage, and career? I recalled our childhood, how she taught me to ride a bike, helped me with homework, and stood up to bullies. I thought of our parents, who would be devastated. But then I remembered my destroyed credit score, the $623,000 debt in my name, and the fundamental breach of trust that I couldn't grasp. Yes, I finally said. I need to protect myself. If she faces consequences for what she did, that's her responsibility, not mine. Detective Cruz responded with a nod. I know this is difficult. We'll handle the investigation with caution, but I can't guarantee secrecy, especially if charges are made. These cases become public record. As I signed the report, my genuine signature, not the forged one, I felt a strange combination of relief and dread. The machinery of justice was now in motion, and I couldn't stop it even if I tried. 2 days later, Detective Cruz called to provide an update. We've validated your suspicions, Miss Morgan. The mortgage application was made online using your personal information, but from an IP address, traceable to your sister's old location. We're also looking into her husband's possible participation. Financial crimes of this nature are rarely conducted by a single person in a household. Damien. I hadn't considered his involvement until now, but he would have known. As a financial advisor, he may have even helped plan the entire scheme. There's more, Detective Cruz added. We've discovered evidence suggesting they were planning to declare bankruptcy in your name once the debts became unmanageable. There are searches from their home computer about bankruptcy laws and identity abandonment. The premeditated nature of their betrayal astounded me. They hadn't stolen my identity out of desperation. They had plotted to completely destroy my financial prospects while safeguarding their own. A week after filing the report, I received the formal police documents, which included a complete dossier outlining the evidence against Serafina and Damien. Bank papers revealing transfers from accounts in my name to their personal accounts, loan applications with fake signatures, and credit card statements showing transactions at locations and restaurants I'd never been to. Sitting at my kitchen table that evening, I looked through each document, carefully underlining the most damaging passages. The cops had done a superb job of constructing an airtight case. According to Detective Cruz, the district attorney was confident in filing charges. Tomorrow was our bi-weekly family supper. Serafina would be there, still convinced that her idea had gone uncovered. She wasn't aware that I had received the foreclosure notice. She had no idea I had spent weeks examining her. She was unaware of the police report, which was now sitting in a manila folder on my counter. As I was getting ready for bed, my phone vibrated with a text from my mother. Looking forward to seeing my girls tomorrow. I'm making your favorite lasagna, love you both. The casual normalcy of it broke something in me. I cried for the first time since the nightmare began. Not just for myself, but for our parents, whose world was about to crumble. I spent nearly an hour deciding what to wear to dinner. It felt significant. I chose a simple navy dress, professional and serious, unlike my typical casual attire. But this was no ordinary dinner. I carefully applied my makeup, determined that Serafina would not notice how deeply she had injured me. I would not offer her satisfaction. As I drove to my parents' house, fond memories of happier family dinners came flooding back. Tonight would be the last of those dinners, at least in the shape I could recognize. After tonight, nothing would be the same. I parked a block away and took a moment to settle myself. As I approached the house, I noticed Serafina's white Range Rover in the driveway. Had that also been a lie? Had it been acquired using fake credit in my name? The comforting aroma of my mother's lasagna greeted me. I pondered turning around and driving home, pretending I was ill. I could confront Serafina discreetly, giving her the opportunity to make amends without public humiliation. But then, I remembered the bankruptcy searches that Detective Cruz mentioned. Serafina and Damien intended to leave me financially devastated while they walked away untouched. They deserved no mercy. I rang the doorbell, the weight of the police report in my backpack felt like a brick. Lila, my mother said, grinning as she opened the door. She grabbed me into a hug. You look beautiful, but so serious. Is everything okay at the hospital? Everything's fine, Mom, I said, returning her hug. Just tired from a long week. Inside, my father was sitting in his customary seat, a recliner with a glass of red wine. There's my girl. Want some wine? It's that Oregon Pinot you like. Thanks, Dad. That would be nice. Serafina's laugh, as brilliant and melodious as ever, echoed through the kitchen. She emerged in the doorway wearing an expensive-looking cream top and tailored slacks, her blonde hair neatly dressed and her smile radiant. Lila, finally, I was telling Mom about this incredible patient success story I heard from Dr. Bennett at the club. You should talk to him about potential positions in his practice. The benefits are amazing. The audacity stunned me. Here she was, having stolen my identity and offered job advice as if she cared about my well-being. I forced a smile. I'm happy where I am, thanks. If she detected my coolness, she didn't show it. Dinner continued with painful normality. Dad sliced steak. Mom served lasagna. Julian spoke about his new project. The children chattered. Serafina masterfully evaded any concerns regarding their finances, usually shifting the focus to someone else's affairs. Lila, you're quiet tonight, my father remarked as we approached the end of the main course. Have a rough week? I carefully set down my fork. You could say that. Anything you want to talk about? Mom said, her brow furrowing. Serafina stepped in before I could react. Oh, Mom, leave her alone. Not everyone needs to process everything out loud like me. She giggled and flipped her hair. Some people just need to mull things over privately. The irony was almost overwhelming. Serafina, who had committed crimes that would soon be made public, was now arguing for my privacy. Actually, I began, immediately meeting my sister's eyes. There is something I need to discuss with all of you. Serafina's countenance flickered with uneasiness before returning to her usual confident smile. Sounds serious. Let's at least have dessert first. I brought that chocolate mousse cake from Dahlia that you love, Lila. That can wait, I replied firmly. The table went silent. Even the children sensed the sudden stress. Julian, why don't you take the children into the living room? My mother said, her sense of family drama finely honed. After the kids were settled, I dug inside my backpack and took out the manila folder. My heart beat so loudly that I was sure everyone could hear it. Serafina's gaze remained locked on the folder, her grin wavering. What's that, honey? My father inquired. I took a deep breath. The moment had arrived. There was no turning back. This, I continued, resting my palm on the folder, is a police report. The stillness lengthened. My mom's eyes widened. My father placed his wine glass gently. Damien, who had been mostly silent, was attentive, his gaze darting between the folder and Serafina. A police report? My mother repeated. Leela, what happened? Are you all right? I'm not all right, Mom. I've been the victim of a crime. I moved the folder across the table toward Serafina, looking directly at her. Identity theft and fraud, specifically. Serafina did not touch the files. Her face had become very still, with dynamic expressions frozen. What are you talking about? She inquired, her tone unusually high. Open it, I replied calmly. Damien put his hand on Serafina's arm. Maybe we should discuss this privately, Serafina. There's nothing to discuss, she said hurriedly, still not touching the folder. Lila's obviously confused about something. My father, who was never one for tension, attempted to lighten the situation. Is this a joke, girls? No, Dad. I reached across the table and opened up the folder, displaying the first page of the police report with official letterhead and case number. 2 weeks ago, I received a call from Washington Mutual Bank about missed mortgage payments on a $623,000 loan I never took out for a house I've never owned at 4872 Highland Drive. My mother gasped gently. But that's Serafina and Damien's address. I finished for her. The dream house they'd been showing off to everyone for months was purchased through a mortgage fraudulently obtained in my name, along with a home equity line of credit, 3 credit cards, and a personal loan. All maxed out, all in default. All eyes shifted to Serafina, whose face had lost its color. Everyone remained silent for some seconds. Serafina gave a brittle, strained laugh. This is ridiculous. There's obviously been some kind of mistake. A bank error or... The police don't think so, I replied. Neither does the handwriting expert who confirmed the forged signatures. Neither does the IP address evidence showing the mortgage application was submitted from your old condo. Damien abruptly got up. We should leave, Serafina. We don't have to hear these accusations. My father found his voice, deep and shaking with rage. Sit down, Damien. Both of you need to explain what the hell is going on. Serafina's mood abruptly changed. The deer headlights appear to have fled, replaced by cold calculation. Fine. You want an explanation? We hit a rough patch. Damien's firm collapsed when his partner embezzled funds. My commissions dried up during the market correction. We were about to lose everything we'd worked for. So, you decided to steal my identity? I questioned incredulously. To saddle me with over $800,000 in debt I knew nothing about? It was supposed to be temporary, Serafina said, her voice rising. Once the market recovered, once Damien's new clients came through, we were going to refinance everything properly. That's a lie, I replied gently. The police found your searches about declaring bankruptcy in my name. You were never going to make this right. You were planning to destroy my financial future to save yourselves. My mother began crying gently. My father's cheeks had turned an alarming red. Serafina, he replied, his voice unsettlingly quiet. Tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't do this to your sister. Serafina seems to be on the verge of another denial, then her shoulders slumped. We were desperate. You don't understand what it's like having achieved a certain lifestyle, certain status, and then watching it all slip away. People were counting on us to be successful, clients, friends, family, everyone. I was counting on you to be my sister, I murmured, my voice breaking. To love me, not betray me. Damien instantly turned against Serafina. I told you this would blow up in our faces. I told you we should have found another way. There was no other way, Serafina exclaimed back. Your brilliant investment strategies lost us everything. What was I supposed to do? Do not commit felony fraud using your sister's identity, Damien responded. Do you have any idea what this means? We could go to prison, Serafina. My parents were astonished by this interaction. My father then stood up, his hands shaking. Get out. Both of you. Get out of my house. Dad, please, Serafina said, tears welling up in her eyes. I couldn't tell whether it was sincere or calculated. You have to understand. I understand perfectly, he said, cutting her short. You stole from your sister. You lied to all of us. You were willing to destroy Lila's life to maintain your facade. I don't even recognize you anymore. My mother, still in tears, glanced at Serafina, devastated. How could you do this after everything we taught you about honesty, about family? What happened to you, Serafina? Nothing happened to me, Mom. Serafina replied, her defiance returning. I just refuse to fail. Unlike the rest of this family, I have ambition. I have standards. Do you think I wanted to end up like Lila, living in a tiny apartment with plants as my only companions? Her nonchalant cruelty shocked me. Is that what you really think of my life? That it's some kind of failure because I don't have a mansion or a luxury car? You could have had more, Serafina said furiously. You're smart enough, but you've always settled for less. Honestly, it's not like you were even using your good credit score for anything important. Damien grabbed her arm. Enough, Serafina. We're leaving now. He turned to me, his face a mix of rage and panic. This isn't over, Lila. You have no idea what you've done by filing that report. I know exactly what I've done, I said calmly. I've protected myself from criminals. That's what you both are, criminals. And now you'll face the consequences. As they prepared to go, my mother screamed out for Serafina. The police. Will they arrest you? Serafina halted at the door. For a brief time her facade slipped, and I saw genuine dread in her eyes. I don't know, Mom. Probably. After they went, the three of us sat in startled silence. My father poured himself another glass of wine, his hands trembling. My mother wiped her tears with a napkin, appearing much older than her years. I should have seen it, she said finally. All those extravagant purchases. The house we knew they couldn't afford. I just thought they were being irresponsible with their money. Not this. None of us saw it, I replied, grabbing for her hand. I never imagined Serafina capable of something like this. Not to a stranger, and certainly not to me. My father looked at the police report, which was still open on the table. What happens now? The district attorney will decide whether to press charges. Given the evidence, Detective Cruz thinks it's almost certain. Serafina and Damien will be arrested, probably within the week. And the debts? My father, the ever-present accountant, inquired. The mortgage, the credit cards? I'm working with the banks to clear my name. It's a long process, but the police report helps establish that I'm the victim, not a willing participant. My credit is still destroyed, at least for now. We sat together for several hours that night, contemplating the shock, betrayal, and uncertain future. My brother Julian returned from putting his children to bed, and we discussed everything. His first incredulity turned to outrage on my behalf. I'll testify against her if necessary, he declared vehemently. What she did to you is unforgivable. Like I drove home that night, I felt hollowed out, like if something important had been removed from my chest. I had done all possible to protect myself, but there was no satisfaction, only anguish for the sister I thought I knew and the family that would never be the same. The immediate aftermath of that fateful supper felt like scenes from someone else's life, as if I were appearing in a television drama without auditioning. 3 days after the confrontation, Detective Cruz contacted. Arrest warrants have been issued for both Serafina and Damien. They were taken into custody at their home, my home, according to the fraudulent mortgage, and charged with multiple felonies: identity theft, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. Their arrests generated local headlines. The headline read, "Prominent Seattle realtor and financial advisor accused with identity theft scheme." The casualty was Serafina's sister, according to the report, although my name was mercifully not revealed. Nonetheless, anyone who knew our family could quickly figure it out. My phone was continuously buzzing with messages from anxious friends, distant relatives, and even former classmates. I turned it off, unable to bear the well-intended but intrusive questions. My parents retreated into a state of shock and embarrassment. Dad stopped attending his weekly golf games because he couldn't face pals who had definitely seen the news. Mom has taken a leave of absence from teaching. Their social network, which had grown over decades, suddenly felt dangerous. Everyone must be talking about us, Mom stated during one of my visits, as she wondered what went wrong with Serafina. You didn't go wrong, I told her. A portion of me wondered the same thing. Were there symptoms of Serafina's moral flexibility that we had all overlooked or forgiven over the years? My family's pressure to withdraw the charges began subtly, but grew stronger as the truth of Serafina's condition became clearer. She and Damien had been released on bond but had to relinquish their passports. Their assets were frozen, including the house, which the bank was now attempting to seize. She made a terrible mistake, my mother pleaded over the phone one evening. But she's still your sister, still our daughter. Couldn't you ask the district attorney to reduce the charges? Maybe some kind of probation instead of prison. Mom, she stole my identity. She planned to declare bankruptcy in my name. Do you understand what that would have done to me? I wouldn't have been able to rent an apartment, get a car loan, maybe even keep my job if it required a security clearance. She was willing to destroy my life. I know, honey. What she did was inexcusable, but she has 2 young children. Think about your niece and nephew growing up without their mother. That was the hardest part. Ilara and Rowan, ages 5 and 7, are completely innocent in this situation. I adored those youngsters. They now risk losing their parents to incarceration as a result of my police report. My determination weakened. Marissa helped me recover perspective on a much-needed night out. Listen to me, she said, firmly putting down her vodka tonic. Serafina chose to commit many felonies, to victimize her own sister, and to endanger her children by engaging in criminal behavior. None of this is your fault. The repercussions are hers to face, not yours to ease. But your parents are doing what parents do, attempting to protect their child. But they are protecting the wrong child in this circumstance. You are the victim here, Lila, and don't let them make you feel bad for sticking up for yourself. She was correct, of course. When I visited with the district attorney the next week, I made it clear that I had no desire to drop or reduce the charges. Miss Morgan, I want to commend your resolve, Prosecutor Clara Wu said. Many identity theft cases involving family members never make it to court because victims withdraw under family pressure. But these crimes have real consequences, and they merit real punishment. The judicial proceedings progressed painfully slowly. Throughout it all, I had to keep working, paying my expenses, and trying to rebuild my broken credit. I'll never forget the day Serafina and Damien eventually agreed to a plea deal, 9 months after our showdown. I waited in the courtroom, seeing my sister, who was slimmer now and had replaced her fancy clothes with a modest blue suit, stand before the judge. Serafina Vale, you have pleaded guilty to 1 count of identity theft, 1 count of fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy, according to the judge. Before I pronounce sentence, do you wish to make a statement? Serafina turned slightly to look at me in the gallery. For a brief time I caught a glimpse of my childhood sister, vulnerable, human, and flawed. I want to apologize to my sister, she replied, her voice calm but soft. What I did was unforgivable. I betrayed your trust in the worst possible way, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I was selfish and desperate and terrified of failure, but that's no excuse for hurting the person who has always supported me and believed in me. I'm so sorry, Lila. The judge sentenced Serafina to 18 months in federal prison, while Damien received 12 months. Both were sentenced to 3 years of supervised release and ordered to pay full restitution. As Serafina was brought away, our gazes met one more time. There was so much unspoken between us, so much damage that may never be mended. I wasn't sure whether I could ever forgive her. But in that moment, I recognized the complexities of my emotions, anger and betrayal interwoven with recollections of shared childhood, of love that had been genuine despite everything that had happened since. The weeks after the sentencing were a jumble of practical issues. The bank foreclosed on the house and sold it at auction. I worked with credit agencies to have the bogus accounts removed from my record, which was a painstakingly tedious process. My relationship with my parents stayed strained. They paid Serafina regular visits, but rarely mentioned them to me. We attempted to retain a sense of family connection, but our interactions were brief, avoiding the elephant in the room. Thanksgiving passed, and it was the first time in my recall that there was no entire family gathering. Christmas was likewise split. Our family's decades-long traditions, as well as our trust, had been shattered. The day the bank finally erased the false mortgage from my credit report was like coming out of a long dark cave. My credit score was steadily recovering. I'd relocated to a new apartment, hoping for a fresh start away from the memories of treachery. As winter transitioned into spring, I got an unexpected letter. Not from Serafina, who had repeatedly written with apologies I couldn't accept, but from my niece Alara. In shaky handwriting on pink paper she wrote, "Dear Aunt Lila, I miss you a lot. Grandma says you're mad at Mommy because she did something bad. I'm sometimes mad at Mommy too. Like when she wouldn't let me have 2 desserts. But I still love her. Do you still love her? Can you come see me in Rowan? We have a new apartment, but it's small and doesn't have a garden like the big house. Love, Ilara." Tears welled up in my eyes as I saw a child's innocence, unable to comprehend the gravity of what had occurred. Regardless of my feelings toward Serafina, Ilara and Rowan were innocent victims of their parents' sins. They deserved an aunt who loved them, even if that affection had to be kept aside from their mother's treachery. That evening I called my parents and asked if I might see the kids. The relief in my mother's voice was evident. "They ask about you all the time," she continued. "They would love to see you." My weekend visit with my niece and nephew was the first hesitant step toward mending. Not forgiveness precisely, but an acknowledgement that familial relationships, especially when severely wounded, do not simply vanish. They evolve, necessitating new boundaries, expectations, and definitions of trust. 6 months after Serafina began serving her term, the foreclosure sign was removed from the front of the Highland Drive house. Another family moved in, unknowing of the events that had occurred within those walls. I drove past on occasion, experiencing an odd mix of emotions. Not remorse or envy, but something more complicated. The house that had signified my sister's treachery was now simply a house, inhabited by people who had no relation to our family's grief. My credit score, while not totally repaired, had returned to the fair level. The bogus accounts had been removed. I'd settled into my new apartment, which was smaller than my previous one, but in a more secure building with a protected mailbox. The paranoia stayed, a regular companion I was learning to cope with. My weekly therapy appointments with Dr. Iris Lang had become an essential component of my healing. Family betrayal creates a unique kind of trauma, Dr. Lang stated. The people we expect to protect us become the source of harm. It fundamentally challenges our ability to trust. "Will I ever trust anyone again?" I asked, partly jokingly. "You'll trust differently," she'd said, more thoughtfully and deliberately. "That's not necessarily a bad thing." She was correct. I'd grown more careful, more vigilant in analyzing financial accounts, and more selective about who I let into my inner circle. But I hadn't completely withdrawn from life, as had been my concern in those dismal early days. My connection with my parents was slowly improving, but it would never be the same again. The strain of split loyalties, their natural impulse to support Serafina versus my justifiable need for acceptance as the victim, created an underlying tension. But we were all trying. Sunday dinners had resumed but less regularly and with a cautious avoidance of certain issues. "Your father and I visited Serafina yesterday," my mother said during one of these dinners, keeping a close eye on my expression. "How is she?" I inquired, shocked by my own real interest. "Managing. Teaching an ESL class to other inmates. She asked about you." I nodded but gave no response. I still wasn't ready to see Serafina, to confront her across a prison table and hear more apologies. Maybe someday, but not now. My father, who had been relatively silent about Serafina for months, suddenly spoke up. "She's different in there. Humbled, I think. I think she's finally understanding the magnitude of what she did to you." It was the first time he explicitly acknowledged me as the sufferer, rather than Serafina's suffering. The validation, though long overdue, meant more than I could say. "Thank you for saying that, Dad," I replied quietly. Extended family provided the most unexpected help. My cousin Nadia, with whom I had never been particularly close, reached out. "I never told anyone in the family," she informed me as she drank coffee. "But my college roommate stole my identity, opened credit cards, ran up thousands in debt. I know something about what you've been through." "What did you do?" I inquired. "Press charges just like you. Lost friends who thought I was overreacting. Never regretted it for a minute." Finding this community of understanding, other identity theft victims who fully understood the violation I had endured, became a vital part of my healing. I joined an online support group and later began attending in-person meetings of a financial crime survivors network. There I encountered people from all walks of life whose tales mirrored mine. The shock of discovery. The time-consuming process of clearing their names. The destroyed relationships with those who couldn't understand why they wouldn't just forgive and move on. In their presence, I was not required to explain or defend my feelings. They already knew. Through this network, I was able to contact with a charity group that assists victims of identity theft. After taking advantage of their resources, I started volunteering, utilizing my own expertise to help others navigate the maze of systems, credit bureaus, law enforcement, financial institutions. "You have a gift for this," Celine, the director of the group, told me. "You're compassionate without sugarcoating the reality of what they're facing." This effort brought meaning to my pain by translating a traumatic personal experience into information that could benefit others. I couldn't reverse what Serafina had done, but I could utilize it to make someone else's path less lonely and more manageable. Moving to my new apartment was not only a practical requirement, but it also served as a symbolic new beginning. I filled it with plants as usual, but also with new furnishings that had little resemblance to my life before betrayal. I set up a tiny home office with a locking file cabinet, not because I expected another family member to take my identity, but because the experience showed me the importance of careful security. When Serafina had been detained for about a year, I received a letter that stood out among her earlier attempts at communication. Unlike her previous apologies, this one addressed the specific hurt she had caused me. "I've been working with a therapist here," she announced. "She's helping me understand that true accountability entails recognizing not only that I did something wrong, but also how my actions hurt you. I stole more than your identity, Lila. I stole your sense of security, your trust in family, and your faith in my love for you. I can't repair the damage, but I want you to know that I see it clearly now. I'm not asking for forgiveness, or even a response. I simply want you to know that I understand what I did, and I'll live with that knowledge for the rest of my life." I did not react right away, but I saved the letter and read it from time to time. The acknowledgement of specific harms felt more sincere, comprehensive and conscious than her earlier general apologies. Around this time, I made a decision that startled even myself. Using part of the reparation money that had finally began to arrive from Serafina and Damien's seized assets, I made a deposit on a little house with a large yard, ideal for an expanding garden. The irony was not lost on me. My sister's transgression eventually resulted to me acquiring the home she had fraudulently claimed in my name. The day I signed the legal mortgage papers, a time that should have been entirely joyful, I felt an unexpected surge of emotion. Sitting in the loan officer's office, studying documents that were strikingly identical to those forgeries in my name, I felt a strange circle closing. "Is everything all right, Miss Morgan?" the loan officer said. "Yes," I said, signing my real name on a loan I had chosen for a house I could afford. "Everything is fine, better than fine actually." Taking ownership of my new home was a strong act of reclamation. I painted my walls in colors I liked, started a vegetable garden, and invited friends to a housewarming party, my first true celebration since the identity theft discovery. Marissa brought champagne and a doormat that said, "Not today, identity thieves." Dark comedy made me laugh despite myself. My parents also visited, bringing a houseplant and awkward well wishes. They were striving to support this new chapter while maintaining their friendship with Serafina. "It's a lovely home, Lila," my mother exclaimed, holding me warmly. "We're so proud of you." "For buying a house?" I inquired. "For everything," my father explained. "For how you've handled all of this with dignity and strength. It wasn't completely mending. That would take years longer, if it ever arrived. But acknowledgement was important. 2 weeks after my housewarming, I finally did something I had been thinking about for months. I drove to the federal penitentiary institution where Serafina was serving her term and put my name on her visitor list. I wasn't ready to see her yet, but I wanted the choice there if and when the time came. As I continue to rebuild my life, I've realized that healing is a journey, not a destination. Some days I feel strong and forward-looking. Others experience the betrayal as fresh and intense. Throughout my trip I've learned to accept both realities. What happened between my sister and me is a narrative with no clear finale or ideal resolution. Once betrayed, family relationships can never be fully rebuilt. However, they can evolve into something new, perhaps more honest, with clearly defined boundaries and carefully restored trust. I'm not sure if Serafina and I will ever restore anything approximating our prior intimacy. I'm not sure whether I'll ever totally trust her again. But I'm confident that I've weathered the worst betrayal I can conceive, and I've grown stronger, wiser, and more self-sufficient than before. If there's one takeaway from all of this, it's that trust should be viewed as a valuable resource, given wisely, guarded appropriately, and removed when necessary for self-protection. Love and trust are not the same thing, which I had never completely understood until today. I can love my sister while realizing that she has broken my trust in ways that may never be restored. This event taught me that there are and should be boundaries to family loyalty. Standing up for yourself, even when it means going against others you care about, is not selfish, but rather vital. If forgiveness is granted, it must follow accountability rather than replace it. I am continuously creating my story and figuring out how to move forward. But I know this. I will not be a victim in silence. I refuse to give up my financial future to protect someone who has not protected me. I refuse to accept betrayal as the cost of family harmony, and in those refusals, I found my strength. How about you? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? How did you manage it? And what boundaries did you set afterward? I would love to hear your stories in the comments section below. If this testimony made you feel less alone in your own experience with family betrayal, please like it and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences of perseverance and recovery. Share with someone who may be dealing with similar challenges. Knowing that others have walked the same arduous route can make a huge difference. Thank you for hearing my story. Remember, protecting yourself is not selfish. It is crucial for survival and eventual recovery. Sitting in the loan officer's office, studying documents that were strikingly identical to those forgeries in my name, I felt a strange circle closing. "Is everything all right, Miss Morgan?" the loan officer said. "Yes," I said, signing my real name on a loan I had chosen for a house I could afford. "Everything is fine. Better than fine, actually." Taking ownership of my new home was a strong act of reclamation. I painted my walls in colors I liked, started a vegetable garden, and invited friends to a housewarming party, my first true celebration since the identity theft discovery. Marissa brought champagne and a doormat that said, "Not today." Identity thieves. Dark comedy made me laugh despite myself. My parents also visited, bringing a houseplant and awkward well wishes. They were striving to support this new chapter while maintaining their friendship with Serafina. "It's a lovely home, Lila," my mother exclaimed, holding me warmly. "We're so proud of you." "For buying a house?" I inquired. "For everything," my father explained. "For how you've handled all of this with dignity and strength. It wasn't completely mending. That would take years longer, if it ever arrived. But acknowledgement was important. 2 weeks after my housewarming, I finally did something I had been thinking about for months. I drove to the federal penitentiary institution where Serafina was serving her term and put my name on her visitor list. I wasn't ready to see her yet, but I wanted the choice there if and when the time came. As I continue to rebuild my life, I've realized that healing is a journey, not a destination. Some days I feel strong and forward-looking. Others experience the betrayal as fresh and intense. Throughout my trip I've learned to accept both realities. What happened between my sister and me is a narrative with no clear finale or ideal resolution. Once betrayed, family relationships can never be fully rebuilt. However, they can evolve into something new, perhaps more honest, with clearly defined boundaries and carefully restored trust. I'm not sure if Serafina and I will ever restore anything approximating our prior intimacy. I'm not sure whether I'll ever totally trust her again. But I'm confident that I've weathered the worst betrayal I can conceive. And I've grown stronger, wiser, and more self-sufficient than before. If there's one takeaway from all of this, it's that trust should be viewed as a valuable resource, given wisely, guarded appropriately, and removed when necessary for self-protection. Love and trust are not the same thing, which I had never completely understood until today. I can love my sister while realizing that she has broken my trust in ways that may never be restored. This event taught me that there are and should be boundaries to family loyalty. Standing up for yourself, even when it means going against others you care about, is not selfish, but rather vital. If forgiveness is granted, it must follow accountability rather than replace it. I am continuously creating my story and figuring out how to move forward. But I know this. I will not be a victim in silence. I refuse to give up my financial future to protect someone who has not protected me. I refuse to accept betrayal as the cost of family harmony, and in those refusals, I found my strength. How about you? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? How did you manage it? And what boundaries did you set afterward? I would love to hear your stories in the comments section below. If this testimony made you feel less alone in your own experience with family betrayal, please like it and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences of perseverance and recovery. Share with someone who may be dealing with similar challenges. Knowing that others have walked the same arduous route can make a huge difference.